Chapter 386. Lu Li realized that Ning Daoqi's condition was even better than before he was injured. Although he had confirmed Ning Daoqi's condition and he was only one step away from death, it seemed that Ning Daoqi was getting more and more energetic and his breath was getting stronger. He did not look like a person who was about to die. Ning Daoqi could walk on his own on the official road. Looking at his increasingly ethereal breath, Lu Li could not help but wonder if Ning Daoqi's substitute ability was so strange that he could only use it when he was on the verge of death. "Brother Ning," Lu Li called out to him, "do you feel better?" Ning Daoqi shook his head and smiled bitterly. "I don't know what sin I have. Although my body is like a leaking gunny sack, my spirit is getting better and better. My martial arts have broken through a barrier that has been bothering me for a long time. My vital qi is unprecedentedly lively. Although my meridians are broken, my vital qi has broken free from the restraint of my body and I can use it more freely. I have lived for half of my life and I still can't understand such a strange thing." The old man smiled bitterly as he said. Lu Li's expression was numb. He took a deep breath and said, "Brother, can you return the time that was taken away from me? Every once in a while, I disappear from this world for a second. It's very inconvenient when I'm on the run." Hearing this, Ning Daoqi's expression became even more bitter. "My friend, please forgive me. I really don't know how to stop." Lu Li sighed and looked at the clear direction. He said seriously, "Brother, it's difficult to stop the Qilin demon in my body from breaking out of the seal with just the two of us. We have to cooperate with the righteous people in the world. Now that Dita Peak is far away in the north and the 4 holy monks are gathered in the center of Sichuan, right next to Tsutong, I'm afraid we won't have enough time to contact both sides. Since you will be fine for the time being, why don't we split up? I will bring your token to House Master Fan, and I will trouble you to contact the 4 holy monks in Sichuan." Ning Daoqi stopped the suggestion and pondered for a long time. On the one hand, he was really worried about the disaster in Lu Li's body, but on the other hand, what Lu Li said made a lot of sense. Soon, they arrived at the critical junction where they would part ways. At this time, Ning Daoqi's footsteps became hesitant. Lu Li looked back at him in surprise, only to see that Ning Daoqi's eyes were filled with surprise. "Fellow Taoist Ning?" Lu Li gently called out to him. Genius Ning Dao came back to his senses. He stepped forward and said, "Young friend Lu, fellow Taoist." It was Ning Daoqi's voice. Ning Daoqi could clearly hear a very familiar voice coming from behind him. It was the same voice as his. He saw Lu Li looking at him and behind him with an extremely shocked expression. Only then did Ning Daoqi turn his head around in realization, only to see a copy of himself behind him looking at him in surprise. "Taoist? Do you have any twin brothers?" Lu Li's voice floated as if she was in a dream. Both Ning Daoqi shook their heads blankly. Ning Daoqi felt that the things that happened during this period of time had completely overturned his view of the world, but none of them gave him such a big impact at this moment. Inexplicably, he knew that this was him. The 2 Ning Daoqi belonged to the same person. The 3 people who were shocked to the point that they were in a trance for a while before they understood why this happened. Lu Li was a little confused. She said to Ning Daoqi, "Fellow Taoist Ning, all these things are because of your strange substitute. How can there be such a strange substitute ability in this world?" He shook his head with a responsible expression. "What is a substitute? Are you referring to my Yin spirit that appeared out of nowhere?" Ning Daoqi was confused. "Yin spirit?" Lu Li was surprised for a moment, then she nodded and said, "You are right to think that way. Fellow Taoist Ning, have you ever been hurt by a stone arrow?" Seeing Ning Daoqi's expression of realization, Lu Li nodded and said, "That's right. That stone arrow has a special ability. It can awaken our hidden ability. It can float behind us in the form of a ghost-like shadow. These abilities are mysterious and strange. There is no lack of special magical abilities." Lu Li pointed at him and said, For example, fellow Taoist, your substitute can solidify the concept of time. Every once in a while, a person will disappear for a moment, and that moment of disappearance will be occupied by fellow Taoists. Currently, the time occupied by fellow Taoist has two functions. One is to turn it into your own. In the same period of time, fellow Taoist will not die and will always exist. The other function. Luli pointed at the two Ning Daoqi and said, just like now you can split yourself from other times. Because it is the time that fellow Taoist has stolen, this self will not occupy fellow Taoist's time, and can exist forever. It is equivalent to another Taoist. Because there were some concepts that Ning Daoqi in the world of Tang was not clear about, so Lu Li's explanation was a little vague, but Ning Daoqi still understood most of what she said. In Ning Daoqi's substitute ability, time is a kind of material power. He can steal other people's time to use, so he can hang on for a breath without dying. He can also use this time in multiple threads, so he can split himself from other timelines. Lu Li explained and sighed. Fellow Taoist Ning's ability is really too heaven-defying. Each person can provide you with 1/60th of your time, as long as the connection between you and these 60 people is not broken, fellow Taoist will not die. And with another 60 people, fellow Taoist can occupy two portions of time, and split into a completely identical self. Ning Daoqi was not happy but frowned and asked, if so? If I can live, then won't I be stealing the lives of 60 people? Then won't I be stealing the time of 120 people? Although Lu Li did not laugh at his pedantry, she did not agree with his view. She asked, what if we let the Qilin demon or the divine tree destroy this world? What is the meaning of the time and life of the people in this world? Yes, we have to think of the big picture. Ning Daoqi was not a pretentious person, so he quickly abandoned his moral shackles, and with a shake of his body, 3 Ning Daoqis appeared. One of them cupped his fists and said to Lu Li, now we don't have to worry about no one helping us. I will follow you to Di Ta Peak, and the others will visit the Pillars of the Righteous, hoping that we can gather the strength of the world to quell the primeval demon. The few of them then went their separate ways, and Lu Li also felt that his actions were in harmony with the surroundings, not missing a second for every move. Chapter 387. It was getting darker and darker, and there was a trace of moonlight on the horizon. The deadline given by Fu Hongyan was getting closer and closer. The people of the Li family and the Song family had already arrived at the shore, and even the so-called King Garuda had come nearby secretly. However, there was no trace of the Buddhists behind him. It seemed that these monks had made up their minds to hide behind them. Fu Hongyan didn't pay attention to them. They would only know what they had lost when the general situation of the meeting of Chu Tang was settled. Gao Li was nowhere to be seen, and no one knew what the truth team behind them was thinking. In this way, there were already 3 major forces and 4 Samsara teams scheduled to board the rock pile. However, the time of the meeting of Chu Tang was very close. Hazem, what the hell are you doing? Stephen asked in confusion. This meeting of Chu Tang was supposed to be a negotiation for us to work together to resist the mysterious expert behind the Wind Chasers. However, it's obvious that this intention has completely failed. Hazem sneered. There's no trust among us. The Shenwu wants to trick us, and Fu Hongyan has already revealed her ambition. Then why should I play with them? Hazem asked back. Why should I abide by a game rule that is disadvantageous to me? Stephen shrugged indifferently. Anyway, my chips don't belong to me. That pig is completely controlled by the Buddhists. I don't want to fall out with the Buddhists for the time being. So you, on the other hand, you withdrew your chips in advance. Aren't you afraid of the banker? He signaled Di Guangzong with his eyes. Hazem sneered in a low voice. Fu Hongyan has made a big scene, and they can't wait to rope me in. Why would they fall out with me? While they were speaking, there was another commotion on the shore. A group of Li clan experts pushed out a 5-fong ironwood airship from upstream. Its dark hull braved the wind and waves as it cleaved through the rapids at its bow. It sailed steadily through the turbulent river. The Lee clan experts and a veteran member of the Divine Martial Corps on the ship headed toward the verdant rock pile in a probing manner. The turbulent currents and the jagged reefs that looked like blades couldn't stop this huge ship. Stephen clearly saw a submerged reef that looked like a triangular blade sticking out of the water and hitting the huge ironwood ship. The reefs that had been polished by the river water for thousands of years were crushed into pieces, but the huge ironwood ship didn't even have a scratch on it. Just as they were about to get close to the pile of rocks, a long chant came from the bottom of the ship. A huge head with sharp edges popped out of the water and crushed the head of the veteran of the Shinwu team with one claw. With a huge wave, it easily flipped over the ironwood ship like a straw. Kacha. Di Guangzong, who was standing on the shore, forcefully crushed the railing. Under the gloating eyes of Stephen and Hazem, the vice-captain of the Shinwu team pulled out the Constellation Demon sword and held a strange-looking long blade in his other hand. The handle of the blade seemed to extend from his spine to the translucent blade. Tiger Soul! Stephen and Hazem exclaimed at the same time. The characteristics of this divine weapon were so obvious that they naturally recognized it. They had never heard that the vice-captain of the Shinwu team could use a blade, let alone a powerful divine weapon like Tiger Soul. Stephen shouted angrily, "Damn it, we were all fooled by this bastard Di Guangzong." He said that he would specialize in the sword art of evil monarch Xiantian, but the core martial arts techniques like the 3 blades, 3 swords, and 3 divine skills must be cultivated in both blades and swords. How could Di Guangzong not choose this path? I was also fooled by him. The blade energy of Tiger Soul pierced through the dark clouds that lingered in the center of Chuan all year round, making the rising moon shine on the surface of the river. Di Guangzong's messy hair danced in the wind as he shouted at Fu Hongyan, who was on the pile of rocks, "Fu Hongyan! How dare you kill a member of the Shinwu team?" The moonlight shone on her red dress, making it look bloody. Fu Hongyan turned her head indifferently in the midst of Di Guangzong's roar. She glanced at Shenong, who was looking at Tiger Soul with interest, and said calmly, "It seems that the Shinwu team has decided not to come out. I wonder if he will continue to hide in the back after I beat up his vice-captain like a dog? That guy is a madman who only cultivates martial arts." Fu Hongyan pressed her index finger on the corner of her mouth and smiled at Shenong. "It seems to be not very nutritious. That blade of his is very chewy." The blade was transformed from the remains of a strange creature. It is violent and cruel, and contains all of its evolution and bestial will. Eating it can stimulate the demonic nature of the Qilin demon in your body and strengthen your foundation. The spine of the blade is the remains of a mutated tiger, and you can extract the bloodline of the mutated tiger to strengthen the characteristics of the Qilin demon. After all, the relationship between the white tiger and the Qilin demon has a long history. Chernong commented one by one, "And that sword, it is very demonic. It seems to be left behind by my own race, but it is too weak, too weak. It has been chopped into 8 pieces, but it can also be fed to the Qilin demon." Hearing him say this, Fu Hongyan rolled her eyes without any respect and thought to herself, "You don't seem to be that great. At least he scared the gods and demons of the world, but you only have Nuwa on your side. Speaking of which, isn't the Star Tribulation just the remains of the Ancestor Sky Demon? Ancestor Sky Demon? What is the relationship between it and the Primordial Sky Demon?" While the two were commenting, Di Guangzong had already made his move. Tiger Soul soared high, and the blade aura cut through the sky like a meteor falling to the ground. The endless battle intent that was inherited from the fierce god Qiyu exploded in Di Guangzong's chest. This violent will that could subdue everything seemed to have touched the demonic nature of Fu Hongyan and the demon in her body. The fiercest will from another world had completely stimulated the demonic nature of Fu Hongyan, the most evil existence. As soon as he made his move, he used Chiyo's fiercest and most evil unique skill, the devouring heaven and destroying earth 7 limits. It was like the movement of the earth's crust in the ancient times, which set off a monstrous tsunami, with the will to subdue the heaven and earth, and set off endless turbid waves on the Yangtze River. The endless flow of the river was cut off by this blade, and the dry bottom of the Yangtze River, that was hundreds of meters wide, was exposed. This was the power of the devouring heaven and destroying earth 7 limit. In the blink of an eye, Di Guangzong had become the incarnation of the great god Chiyu, controlling the terrible power of natural disaster that could destroy the world. Facing such a terrible power, Fu Hongyan not only had no fear or distractions, but her eyes were filled with unprecedented spirit, and the demonic nature in her body was instantly active to a terrible level. The real terrible power of the Qilin demon was awakening. Of course, this was not because of the threat of Di Guangzong, but the stimulation of the power and will of the fierce god Chiyu behind the devouring heaven and destroying earth 7 limits. This was a battle between the fiercest god in another world and the most evil demon in this world. Even though they were separated by endless time and space, the two evilest wills still had to fight to the death. Di Guangzong felt that the tiger soul in his hand was cooperating with him like never before. The power of the devouring heaven and destroying earth 7 limits, which was difficult to control in the past, was incomparably compatible with him today. He suddenly felt that a god was born in his bladesmanship, controlling this terrible power. This was not him controlling the bladesmanship, but the terrible bladesmanship controlling him. It was the ancient fierce god Chiyu, who used his body to fight with his destined opponent across time and space. To be continued. Chapter 388. Genius 1 second. Remember, if you want to go? The internet provides you with wonderful novels to read. Do you feel it? Chen Ong smiled and said to Fu Hongyan, whose consciousness was on the verge of waking up and fainting, "This is the power of the 7 limits of devouring heaven and destroying earth, and this is the power of the demon Chiyu. You should be able to feel the flame in your chest. That is the instinct of the demon Qilin, the burning power that is about to melt, and the consciousness that is about to collapse. Either you control it with your supreme will, or you will be devoured by it. Walking on this path, you have no second choice." Fu Hongyan heard Chen Ang's voice in her fainting consciousness. She knew that Chen Ang was just a shadow in her consciousness. This seemingly long reminder was actually just a wave in her consciousness. For the outside world, it was just a millionth of a second. But if she couldn't wake up soon and control this terrible instinct, she would be devoured by her extremely selfish and egoistic inner self in the next moment. This is the feeling I enjoy. Fu Hongyan looked up to the sky and laughed. Only at this moment, when I am on the edge of life and death, existence and extinction, can I be so deeply aware of the existence of self, and can I so deeply touch the barrier in my heart, the barrier between self and non-self. Fu Hongyan gently reached out her left hand and touched the air in front of her as if she was touching a thin film that could be broken with one touch. Facing Chiyo's earth-shattering slash that split the Yangtze River with the power of natural disasters, she actually reached out her left hand and calmly blocked the attack as if it were a giant bubble, as if she were holding a giant bubble in her hand. Full of contempt, pride, and disdain, she calmly reached out and blocked the attack. Everyone watching this battle could feel the fierce saber energy that cut through the Yangtze River. With the terrible power that could split the sea and shatter the ground, it met Fu Hongyan's slim hand. The fragile palm that couldn't resist the power of the 7 limits of devouring heaven and destroying earth seemed to be an extremely uncoordinated picture. The golden tiger's soul saber and the fair fingers, the fiendish, furious, and brutal attack, and Fu Hongyan's careless finger, no matter how ridiculous and dramatic the comparison was, could not be more conflicting than this. But it was this casual and indifferent finger that separated the jadeite pile where Fu Hongyan was in from the outside world. The broadsword chi that cut the Yangtze River burst like a bubble at Fu Hongyan's fingertip. The doomsday scene of the whole Tsutong Gorge being cut open seemed to be pierced by Fu Hongyan's finger like an illusion. The peerless saber technique that could engulf the heavens and destroy the earth was blocked by the thin membrane on Fu Hongyan's fingertip. Impossible! Di Guangzong's tiger soul-killing intent entered his body, and his eyes turned completely white. His messy hair fluttered in the wind, and he looked at Fu Hongyan in disbelief. He roared at the sky, "Chiyu is possessed by the Chiyu god. Even if you are a 10-star divine demon, you can't. But you can." The onlookers on the shore were also shocked. Even when Di Guangzong's attack broke the void and caused Chiyu to possess him, they were not as shocked as this moment. Hazem was completely dumbfounded. The people of the Li clan and the Song clan were also shocked by this scene that looked like a battle between gods and demons. The last bit of arrogance in their hearts as noble families was brutally crushed. At this moment, everyone on the shore was as helpless as a child. Stephen murmured, "Barrier of the heart." His body trembled slightly, and he said in a firm but incredulous tone, "This is the ultimate defensive stance of the apostles of the gospel of the new era. It is the great power of the barrier of the heart forged by me. The stance in the God space is strengthened." Hazem beside him said in an incoherent tone, "This is the stance? Why don't you say it's the absolute defense or the invincibility of the paladin? A mere 10,000-point stance can destroy the heavens and destroy the 7 limits of the saber technique. That is at least a 10-star divine demon?" At this moment, Chen Eng's voice rang in Fu Hongyan's ears. "Not bad. You can finally control the insignificant power of the Qilin demon. You did even better than I expected. Remember, the only thing that can limit the power of the Qilin demon is your heart and imagination. The bigger your heart is, the bigger the world that the Qilin demon can occupy. If your heart can devour the world and contain the universe, then the power of the Qilin demon can also destroy the world and control the universe." "Got it," Fu Hongyan said confidently. Her figure in the red dress once again became the center of the world in everyone's eyes. Under her dress, Fu Hongyan stepped on the rough and sharp rocks with her bare feet. She slowly walked to the front of Di Guangzong. At this moment, she looked more and more like a person. She was as seductive as a demon, and as mysterious as a god. Even though she had the same appearance and characteristics as them, the people on the shore could no longer associate the current Fu Hongyan with the identity of a human. Di Guangzong struggled out of the emotions of failure. The tiger's soul in his hand roared again, and the ferocious martial arts' true meaning from the great god Chiyu grew stronger. Di Guangzong tried to balance the sword and saber, using the 3 saber, 3 sword, and 3 divine skills of his master, the Xian Tian evil emperor. But how could the tiger's soul submit to a mere human? It even dared to rebel against its creator, Chiyu, let alone an ant like Di Guangzong. The ferocious 7 limits saber intent once again dominated Di Guangzong's body. He still wanted to struggle, but Fu Hongyan sneered. "Stop struggling. You have never been my opponent. Ever since I became a 10-star divine demon, I have never taken you seriously. Stop struggling and drag the tiger's soul down. Give your body to it. I want to fight to my heart's content." "How can you? Team Hongyan has never experienced the story of the new era's Evangelion. How can you have such a powerful stance? There is no way a main god's enhancement has this kind of potential." Di Guangzong tried his best to control his body and asked this last question. "I never had any stance." Fu Hongyan sneered and shook her head. "Di Guangzong, you don't understand what a 10-star divine demon is." Fu Hongyan looked at Di Guangzong's eyes calmly and heard him sigh. "I see. What you took from Lu Li's body is a 10-star divine demon that fits your nature. Your heart is absolute selfishness and possessive selfishness. This is an existence that completely deviates from the human's plan. It emphasizes on selfishness, and the barrier in your heart is extremely strong. You are no longer a human. In most worlds, you are a divine demon, but in the Evangelion's world, you are an apostle. That is the only way you can have such a powerful stance. After deducing this important piece of information, Di Guangzong used an unknown method to spread the news. He smiled and said, "We won." Knowing this secret, Shen Wu will definitely win. He will replace me and stand in front of you again. At that time, you will truly face the terrifying Shen Wu. Chapter 389. Facing Di Guangzong's last effort and psychological attack, Fu Hongyan revealed a playful smile. She shook her head and sighed. "You can't understand our level at all. The information you risked your life to get is just like our faces. It's the symbol of every god and devil. This is our great wish. We don't need to hide our true nature, and we can't hide it. What you should really bring back is the information about the primordial demon. I've already become a chess piece. If you don't seize the opportunity, you'll become the cannon fodder for the primordial demon, the lord of all demons." Fu Hongyan turned her body sideways to face Di Guangzong, who was controlled by Tiger Soul. She slowly took off the silver crown and red rope, letting it dance in the night wind. Her red dress became brighter and brighter. The blood Qilin True Qi attached to the red dress like a life form, and it flowed in the direction of the wind. This strange existence that was between blood, a strange life form, and true Qi extended to Fu Hongyan's body. It mixed with the red dress in the sky, beautiful and fierce. Di Guangzong, who had entered his body, raised the tiger soul again. This time, the power of the tiger soul in Di Guangzong's hand was more than 1,000,000 times fiercer. But this time, it was facing the Qilin demon, who had let go of all shackles and even shed the shell of Fu Hongyan, the most evil demon. It was an absolute egoistic demon. It was bright red like burning blood. It was wriggling, shapeless, and not even tangible. If it had anything complete, it would be itself. Chen Ong looked at the strange existence that had shed its shell. Fu Hongyan might have disappeared long ago, and what was left was just a shell of this strange demon. But Chen Ong knew that Fu Hongyan's essence did not disappear. Instead, it had perfectly merged with the monster's self. One day, even Chen Ong, who had created it, could not separate them. At their level, the meaning of the shell was no longer important. In Chen Eng's eyes, the Qilin demon was merging with Fu Hongyan. At this moment, he laughed. The Qilin True Lord was created in a way that he did not expect. Heaven and earth devouring 7 limits. Qilin Devil True Form. In the state where Di Guangzong was possessed by a ferocious god, the tiger spirit divine blade was raised high. Tracing, as if it had awakened the most ancient memories in the world, causing the world to sink into a dreamland. It recreated the time when the world was first created, when the disaster destroyed the world and its boundless might. Different from Di Guangzong's forceful control of Yuan Qi to create disasters, the demon god's blade contained the supreme power of mind and spirit, which drove the endless Yuan Qi in the void. Just like when Chen Ong chopped out his enemy's consciousness with his saber, Qiyu chopped out that memory in the formless will of the world. The entire world sank into the saber light that swallowed the heavens and decimated the earth, dreaming of endless, world-destroying disasters. At this moment, the 9 prefectures almost collapsed. Thousands of miles away, even people from other continents could feel the earth veins under their feet trembling, and they could feel the magnetic field becoming chaotic. The order of the airflow on the entire planet began to become chaotic, and the sea level was shaking. Storms, tsunamis, earthquakes, fires, floods, meteorites, and countless natural disasters were accumulating power at this moment. Chio's saber actually made the planet under his feet have nightmares. It instinctively dreamed of the ancient times and endless disasters. This horrifying consciousness combined with Chio's saber momentum that could destroy the world. There was no doubt that the moment the tiger's spirit chopped out would be the moment the earth returned to the ancient times, the moment when the disaster overturned the human race. The terrifying 7 limits, the terrifying 7 limits. The 7 limits in the hands of the demon god Chiyo's consciousness made Di Guangzong's sea-breaking saber that cut the Yangtze River into a joke. It even made Qin Eng's stunning saber strike of the martial way of mind lose its color. How could a saber strike from a human's heart compare to the saber strike of the 7 limits from the consciousness of the planet, which carried the endless power of disasters? This was a demon god. This was the power of the fiend god martial way. The saber intent surged and the saber momentum surged. The saber force was vast and surging like a tsunami, tearing the world apart, drowning and devouring everything. The saber force was endlessly ferocious, sharp, and sharp. It contained the power to collapse mountains, cut through rocks and cut gullies. It collapsed mountains and severed earth veins. The saber force was swift and swift, pulling the air currents to form a tornado saber momentum. It slashed horizontally, tearing apart the opponent's corpse in the blink of an eye. The saber force was extremely cold, able to condense the water in the air and turn it into hail. It shot out densely like a violent storm, destroying everything and riddling everything with holes. The blazing saber gleam was like a scorching furnace, burning everything into ashes upon contact. It couldn't be blocked with hardness, but it couldn't be neutralized with softness. It burned the sky and boiled the sea, evaporating everything. The saber force's evil edge split the earth. The cracks spread out in all directions like a spider's web, extending for thousands of miles. The destructive power was like a magnitude 10 earthquake, causing people to have no place to stand. They died tragically under the tiger's soul saber gleam that reflected from the cracks. The power of the 7 great limits, heaven, earth, fire, ice, wind, mountain, and sea, was displayed for the first time in this world. It revealed the true meaning of the saying that had been circulating in the gods' space for a long time. Those who haven't entered the gods' gate are just ants. This saber strike, which was the culmination of the 2 paths of mind and vitality, scared Hazem, who was watching the battle from the side, to death. Stephen's body trembled and he curled up like a baby. Di Guangzong's will was even stronger. The moment the 7 great limits attacked at full force, his soul was wiped out by the will of this world because he couldn't withstand the terrifying will of the fiend god Chiyu. Only the Qilin demon Fu Hongyan and Qin Eng's will, who were facing this saber, could still calmly watch and face this saber strike. The crimson Qilin demon true form carried the unparalleled ambition to devour heaven and earth. It went against the current crazily and faced this saber strike that could devour heaven and earth, which the 7 great limits hypnotized the planet's will. Landslide? Devour. Tsunami? Devour. Earthquake? Devour. The planet's will? The peerless saber will? The fiend god's will? Devour everything. The entire planet was shrouded by a terrifying shadow. A crazy, unparalleled, ambitious, and will existence that surpassed everything else was about to devour the entire planet before it could enter the period of the disaster. The saber will of the 7 great limits was unable to hurt the deranged Qilin demon Qilin. Chiyo's burning ferocious will burned even more fiercely. The saber will of the 7 great limits changed again. It merged all the disasters, and the ultimate saber strike that represented the end of the world, suddenly exploded. Under the activation of the saber skills of the 7 great limits, the planet's will was no longer reminiscing. Instead, it extended down the river of time until the end of everything, until the moment the planet was destroyed. Chiyu made the planet dream to the end of its lifespan, the moment when the planet exploded. At this moment, the ferocious momentum of the Qilin demon Qilin's devouring of the planet was completed. Chiyu activated the 7 great limits, causing the planet's core to start cracking violently. The planet was about to explode. The moment the planet exploded would be the moment when Chiyo's 7 great limits reached their peak. The power of the planet's destruction would be concentrated on attacking the Qilin demon Qilin. It would also be the moment when the Qilin demon Qilin saw the planet's weakest point and took the opportunity to devour the entire planet, completing its transformation. This planet has provoked you, Chen Ong said angrily. Can't you give it a way out? Chapter 390. The constellation demon sword that had been forgotten due to the possession of the demon god leaped up and landed in the hands of Chen Ang's shadow. He sighed and said, "It's a pity that only a little of my projection is here. Otherwise, I'd drag you guys out and hang you up for a beating 10 times. I hope the special ability of this sword isn't broken." A bit of vital qi stolen from Fu Hongyan's Qilin form was attached to the pagoda-shaped blade of the longsword. Chen Ong had no power at the moment and was just a thought in Fu Hongyan's consciousness. Even this bit of vital qi was borrowed from Fu Hongyan. However, in his hands, the constellation demon sword had become completely different from when it was in Di Guangzhong. The tangible sword body had disappeared and turned into a strange arrow that fell onto the ground. It was the fourth heavenly divine weapon, the execution of heaven's fourth arrow that was formed from the demonic weapon's metal. The intangible and intangible demonic weapon's special ability had turned into a demonic aura that contained an extremely pure emotion and was held in Chen Ang's hand. The constellation demon sword was formed from the left hand of the primordial heavenly demon. It combined the anxious emotions of the temple sect leader of Dara and the execution of heaven's fourth sword to form. Although the primordial heavenly demon is a fool, the power that can surpass 10 stars is real. The demonic aura of the demonic weapon's origin was attached to the left hand of Chen Ang's projection and became a carrier of his consciousness. Chen Ong shook his head and said, "I'm just an illusion with no real existence. I can't even pick up a sword, and I have to bear the responsibility of saving the world, forcing me to dismantle such a beautiful demonic weapon like Constellation Tribulation. You guys are really..." The power of the primordial heavenly demon overlapped with his left hand. It carried the origin of demonic aura of the greatest villain in the mystical weapon world and created an effect that even the primordial heavenly demon couldn't predict in Chen Ang's hand. As Chen Ong pointed with his finger, a strange phenomenon appeared in the space at his fingertip. The river water splashed under Chen Ang's feet. He was between Qi Yu and Fu Hongyan, the Qilin demon. He was facing the divine weapon Tiger Soul, which had triggered the planet to explode from the world's consciousness, the 7 natural disasters, the 7 ultimate powers that could really destroy the world, and the Qilin demon, who wanted to devour everything and possess everything. He even wanted to devour the violent destructive power of the Tiger Soul. Chen Ong projected his existence into the depths of the world's consciousness and awakened the will of the planet that was brought into the river of time by the Tiger Soul. Just like how he possessed Fu Hongyan's consciousness, he manifested his existence through the will of the planet under his feet. The awakened will of the planet easily calmed down the agitation of its body and broke the power of the natural disasters carried by the Tiger Soul. The will of the planet, which was threatened by destruction, condensed a consciousness that was enough to bear Chen Ang's existence. The origin of demonic aura in his left hand became a fulcrum for this will to interfere with the world with its earth-shattering power. With a point of his finger, the universe was turned upside down and the world was overturned. Under the influence of this power, the river water splashing under his feet flowed backward like a videotape that was played backward. The frost of early winter on both sides of the river melted silently, and the withered grass and trees were suddenly stained with green. In the deciduous layer of humus, the green leaves stretched their bodies and returned to the withered yellow from the soil. Then they returned to the tree. The entire tree was filled with vitality, and the leaves turned from withered yellow to fresh green. The time of all living beings beside the Tsutong River, except for human beings, was flowing backward. The river in winter suddenly returned to early spring. Flowers covered both sides of the river and hung on the treetop. Di Guangzong, who carried the consciousness of the demon, suddenly woke up. The tiger's soul fell from his hand powerlessly and was devoured mercilessly by the Qilin demon. He did not know when he had turned into a white-haired old man. He could not even lift the tiger soul, and his breath was weak, as if he could die at any moment. Chen Ong glanced at the crazy true body of the Qilin demon, sighed, and pointed his finger at it again. Time had a strange effect on the body of the demon. One of the carriers had decayed and could no longer carry the consciousness of the demon, and the other had returned to Fu Hongyan's original state. Stephen, who was on the shore, couldn't see Chen Ang's existence. He could only see the strange phenomenon of time flowing. Di Guangzong's body was decaying uncontrollably. He looked back at Stephen as if he had something to say, but his old body didn't give him the time to do so. Di Guangzong's body was withering bit by bit, and the head that turned back also turned into ashes under Stephen's horrified gaze. Fu Hongyan, who was next to him, was still wearing a red dress. At this moment, Stephen realized that the balance that the four teams had tried so hard to maintain, and the tacit understanding that they had tried to reach, had been destroyed just like Di Guangzong. Seeing Fu Hongyan looking at him with a smile, countless thoughts flashed through Stephen's mind. In the end, he quickly lowered his head and raised his hands, saying, "I surrender. Captain Hongyan, the Viper team is willing to follow your orders." "It's too late," he heard Fu Hongyan say with a smile. The beautiful woman in front of him was like a ferocious beast, giving him a terrifying pressure as if he was a predator. This crazy warning of death made Stephen cut off his tail without hesitation. His body under the cloak suddenly dissipated, and countless pieces of flesh and blood transformed into bats. With real power, he was ready to break through the space and escape. Every bat carried the same amount of flesh and power as Stephen. As long as one of them survived, Stephen would not die. As for the power that he had lost, he only needed human blood to recover. When he escaped, he would choose a small city with a population of 100,000 people and absorb all the lives in it. He would be able to recover to his most perfect state. Hazem was still confused and didn't know what Stephen was doing. He was wary of Stephen's possible attack, but what happened next scared him out of his wits. Behind Fu Hongyan, a phantom of a strange beast with the body of a dragon unicorn appeared. The terrifying and brutal momentum made Hazem unable to summon any resistance. Blood-red spiritual chi rose from Fu Hongyan's body. Just like the support of the fierce beast behind her, it ferociously bit Stephen. The blood-red spiritual chi swept over those bats that Stephen had turned into at an unimaginable speed. Hazem didn't even hear the sound of bones being chewed. He saw the flesh and blood of those bats, each of which was at the level of 7 stars and carried most of Stephen's power, being devoured. He heard Stephen's desperate roars. The dead river, which was the true ancestor of vampires, covered the entire Yangtze River. Millions of souls and lives were soaked in the river of blood, which was even vaster than the Yangtze River. Every drop of blood carried powerful corrosiveness and vitality. However, the torrential river of blood, the life force that was comparable to that of gods and devils, and the boundless souls within it, were all devoured by Fu Hongyan's terrifying blood-red true energy in the blink of an eye. Even Stephen's life force was melted away, skin and bones gone. After devouring such enormous lives and souls, the bloody spiritual energy finally felt lazy and satisfied, no longer carrying the aggressiveness that made Hazem's hair stand on end. The river of blood, which carried the characteristics of a dead river, ran in the river instead of the Yangtze River. Chapter 391. Faced with such a terrifying Fu Hongyan, Hazem was extremely anxious, but after seeing Stephen, who had turned into the dead river and boasted the undying vitality of the true ancestor of vampires, being devoured so easily, he couldn't muster any will to resist. The existence of the Qilin Demon King's nightmares had become an indelible shadow in his heart. Fortunately, after the blood-red Qilin true blood devoured Stephen, it seemed to have slightly satisfied its insatiable greed, causing its aggressiveness to decrease slightly. It seemed to have no intention of preying on Hazem. In this case, Hashem had no time to think about why. Seeing that the blood river condensed by the Qilin's genuine blood was shrinking toward Fu Hongyan, he seized the chance and decisively abandoned all his teammates. Wrapped in the yellow sand, he fled far away. Before he fled, he deliberately pushed his teammates toward Fu Hongyan to buy time. Qilin True Blood smiled and accepted these snacks without any hesitation, but ignored Hazem, who had escaped. He doesn't have any valuable bloodline, so don't worry about him. The most important thing for you to do now is to digest these nutritious foods. Let's give him to Luli to nourish her body. Chen Ong said to Hongyan with a smile. It's a pity that Chiyu is just a mark in the tiger soul of the heavenly weapon, and the demon Kylin is just a small part of the derivative power that you have plundered. Therefore, you are not in your best state in this battle. But this time, you took the opportunity to swallow the bloodline of the alien demon tiger in the tiger soul and looted Stephen's true ancestor's blood. The Qilin fiend body in your body is finally complete. It is no longer restricted by the origin of Qilin fiend inside Luli. Narrowing her eyes, Fu Hongyan sensed that Stephen's blood and qi and the enormous vitality in the dead river were slowly digesting in her body and gradually spreading a warm feeling. She said delightedly, I feel it too. My weak foundation has finally been stabilized. If I have a few more such tonics, I might be able to condense the real body of the demon Kylin without the origin of Kylin in Luli's body. Chen Ong shook his head with a smile and said to Hongyan seriously, there can only be one demon Qilin in one world. As the saying goes, one Qilin in one world, two Qilins will never meet each other. When Qilin meets, the big Qilin eats the little Qilin. As long as the Qilin in Luli's body is still in the same world as you, only one of you can survive. That's because the Qilin demon is an existence that only belongs to itself. It cannot tolerate two similar individuals. Fu Hongyan smiled calmly. Her eyes did not waver at all. She replied calmly, I know. Believe me, the only one who will survive is me. Don't underestimate me, Your Majesty. The path of a Qilin demon is destined to be lonely, and the most important thing on this path is to be loyal to me. Only by being sincere to oneself can one be sincere to the Tao. Apart from myself, there is nothing else. I can kill anyone who stands in my way, even if it's my parents or friends. I won't be bound by any morality, reason, or anything that isn't me. Nothing will stand in my way except the pursuit of power, the pursuit of eternity, and the ambition to possess everything. Fu Hongyan's eyes were filled with sincerity and ruthlessness. It was as if she regarded everything as ants. It made people feel that the person standing there was not a girl with the power of the Qilin demon, but a monster with the name of Fu Hongyan. Ha ha ha! Chenong laughed out loud. He looked at the monster in his hands with appreciation and nodded. I'm really looking forward to it. Now, I'm sure that Luli is no match for you. His essentially empty heart can't bear the extreme ego of the Qilin demon. How interesting! The few inconspicuous samsara teams that the chief god sent out just so happened to have an extremely egoistic, indifferent, and emotionless existence like you, as well as an empty-hearted, insubstantial existence like Luli, who is the complete opposite of you. How interesting! As the highest existence of the blood race, the true god's genes are one of the most perfect materials to fill in the Qilin demon's shortcomings. Although Stephen's bloodline is only one of the many systems of the blood race, the dead river, which represents the essence of curses in his bloodline, is the perfect existence to forge the foundation of the Qilin demon. Chen Ong excitedly taught Fu Hongyan how to fuse Stephen's true ancestor's bloodline into the Qilin demon's true form. He praised, elevating the dead river into the blood river that represents life and death. The Qilin demon has reached a whole new level. The lives those stupid bats created are the most inferior way of using souls. Only an extremely egoistic existence like the Qilin demon can successfully digest such a large batch of souls and fuse them so perfectly. These 30 million souls are no longer a life. They will become a part of you. Every single one of them is you. It's a pity that there are too few souls. Fu Hongyan frowned and said, that Stephen ruined a plot world and almost killed everyone in Europe to gather 30 million souls? Just the number of souls alone has pushed him to the top of the 9-star warriors. If the Qilin demon hadn't innately suppressed his enhancement, the 30 million lives would be comparable to the vitality of some 10-star warriors. Isn't that enough? How much more difficult is it for you to kill him than killing a chicken? Chen Ong asked with a chuckle. The efficiency of his utilization of 30 million souls is laughably low. As long as a person is slightly more advanced in the utilization of power and nature, how can a system like the Dead River stop a real expert? But you're different. The Qilin demon Qilin's way of existence is destined to make full use of this unexpected surprise. Understand the nature of your existence, Chen Ong reminded her. You haven't carried out the potential of the Qilin demon yet. A terrifying species that wants to swallow the world and prey on the world is definitely not as simple as you think. Fu Hongyan wanted to truly feel her nature, but she always felt that an invisible obstacle was stopping her. She couldn't help but shake her head and murmur to herself, what exactly am I lacking? What's restricting you isn't your potential, nor is it your ability to comprehend. These are your natural instincts. It should be like breathing, something you can use whenever you want. Think about it carefully. What's restricting you? At this moment, Fu Hongyan suddenly came to a realization. I'm afraid it's me who is restricting me. Because I think I'm still a human. At most, I think I'm a monster transformed from a human. I don't realize that. I'm everything. I'm the Qilin demon. I'm one and also everything. I'm a kind of existence in this world, and I'm everything that contains this world. I'm not a human, because human can only contain human. I'm the Qilin demon that can contain everything. In the beginning, I was the Qilin demon. But in the future, I can be the heavenly Tao, I can be Yahweh, I'm infinite. I was once Fu Hongyan, but I'm not just Fu Hongyan. I can be everything. To be continued. Chapter 392. Genius 1 second. Remember, if you want to go? TalkNet provides you with wonderful novels to read. Under the bright moonlight, the surging blood-red river of the Tsutong dyed the moonlight red, reflecting a faint blood-red light. A love go small say, Net Kofu Hongyan's red dress became even brighter in this situation. The samsara travelers and characters on the shore looked at her in fear and waited for their judgment with trepidation. Li Shiming, the young leader of the Li family and the one who had his father's power seized by the samsara travelers, came to the riverside calmly. He cupped his hands to Fu Hongyan, who was staring at the blood river indifferently. Li Shiming, nice to meet you, Fairy Fu. Li Shiming did not look frivolous at all. Instead, he looked very serious. The respect that came from the bottom of his heart made it hard for anyone to dislike him. Even his enemies had to admit that he was charming. Aren't you afraid of me? Fu Hongyan suddenly smiled. She turned back to look at this unusual young man, causing a commotion among the Li clan people in the distance. After so many things, Fu Hongyan had long since become a devil-like character in their hearts. Everyone became nervous after seeing their young master so close to her. I am afraid. Li Shiming answered honestly, but fear is definitely not the solution. If we don't find a way to communicate with you, a misunderstanding will happen sooner or later. At that time, you won't be the one who will suffer. So you came to me? Fu Hongyan said with interest. Then what do you want to know? What do you want to know? What do you want, Fairy? Li Shiming asked straightforwardly. Fairy, you killed the Turkic Khan, killed the mutants, and crossed the Yangtze River. What do you want? Only when we know where Fairy's interests lie can we make concessions and compromise so as not to offend Fairy. Fu Hongyan nodded and smiled. You are right, but I have to disappoint you. My current goal is to survive. As for what happens after I survive, it will not be a good thing for you. Why do you say so, Miss Fu? Li Shiming was surprised to find that someone had suddenly appeared beside him. This was a very offensive thing to do, but when he saw the appearance of the person, he couldn't say any words of blame. The person who came was a nun dressed like a layman. The moment he saw her, even Li Shiming couldn't help but be dazed. He thought to himself, even if Guanyin descended to the world, she would still look like this. This saintly nun with an outstanding temperament said, Fan Qinghui greets Clan Lord Li. Greetings, Miss Fu. With a compassionate expression, she asked Fu Hongyan, Miss Fu, the meeting of Xiutong was originally an alliance meeting of the four powers, but now it has been controlled by you alone. No one from the four powers can stop you. Qinghui came here to seek an answer from Miss. How does Miss intend to use the power of the four sides? Will they continue to resist Yang Guang and overthrow the Sui dynasty, or will they serve you and take over the world? Do you mean the people here? Fu Hongyan asked, pointing at the vague army and elite masters on the shore. Perhaps also the Li clan, the Song clan, the Garuda king, the Revolutionary Army, and even the Buddhism and Taoism. Fan Qinghui answered calmly. The Garuda king? You mean that man-eating bastard Zhu Kan? Fu Hongyan's smile was very wanton, which made Li Shiming and Fan Qinghui uncomfortable. They were not used to a woman acting so presumptuously. Fan Qinghui had a bad feeling that a woman who could smile like this was not an easy person to deal with. She could only bite the bullet and said, The King Zhu Kan has put down the butcher's knife and is willing to be the vanguard of the true dragon to atone for his sins. Li Shiming wanted to say something, but he couldn't say anything when he saw the smile on Fu Hongyan's face. Fu Hongyan sighed, What a pity. If he was here, he might understand what I mean. She smiled and looked into Fan Qinghui's eyes. Her gaze was clear and sincere. I don't need the Li clan, the Song clan, or the Buddhist sect. If I can really get something from you, I hope it's your lives. What? Fan Qinghui thought she had misheard. House Mistress Fan, you should have seen the blood-red river that appeared on the body of the man in the black cloak that I killed, which is the river we are standing on now. Sometimes life is a kind of resource. I have taken 30 million lives from him, which is the blood, life, and soul of 30 million people. But it is not enough. Someone told me that in order to use this resource to its fullest potential, I need to collect the souls and flesh of 296 million people. I am in desperate need of life now. Even if this is just a drop in the bucket, I still want you to give me your lives. Miss Fu. Fan Qinghui still wanted to say something, but she didn't have the chance. A red shadow rushed out from Fu Hongyan's body and swept past Fan Qinghui's body. Li Shiming saw the peerless beauty of the Guanyin Bodhisattva shrink like a dried corpse. Strangely, he could still think of the fact that the fairy-like house mistress Fan was also this ugly after death. Then came the bone-deep fear. He suddenly vaguely felt the nature of Fu Hongyan. That was a characteristic that a real devil could have. She truly regarded everything except herself as an ant. If Li Shiming had cultivated in the modern society, perhaps he could use a more appropriate word to describe her, as an NPC. That was a real degree of contempt. Li Shiming suddenly realized that even though he had talked with her for a while, this monster had never regarded them as a living being. In her eyes, they could only see the coldest disregard. The blood shadow, under Li Shiming's astonished, fearful, and disbelieving eyes, split into two and rushed into the crowd behind him. Fu Hongyan sighed in front of him and said, Unfortunately, there are only 40 to 50,000 people. The Great Sui is the property of the Sky Demon Highness, and I am not allowed to touch it. So, I have to use the surrounding countries to make up the numbers. I wonder if Korea, Silla, Turks, Neon, and Nanman can make up 10 million people? If not, I will have to go to India and Europe to collect materials. I don't know how many worlds it will take for me to make one. 296 billion clones of the blood god. Li Shiming's eyes were filled with anger. Under his accusatory eyes and angry expression, one of the blood shadows that was killing wantonly in the distance suddenly split off and rushed towards him. Li Shiming felt his body turn cold, and his control over his body was taken away. Then, he smelled a thick smell of blood, and then he felt his consciousness, blood, and life being sucked out of his body. He could see his body shrinking into a withered corpse, and then completely falling into the darkness. In the end, only a sigh could be heard. Fu Hongyan indifferently watched as the clones of the blood god sucked all the samsara travelers that she originally wanted to control and subdue. She finally understood her nature and finally gave up the idea of pretending to be a human. Chapter 393. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? TalkNet, providing you with exciting novels to read. Team Viper has lost one member, Team Battle Points -1. Team Viper's captain has died, Team Battle Points -3. Team Viper's entire team has died, Team Beauty has killed Team Viper. Team Truth's captain has died, Team Battle Points -3. Team Truth's entire team has died, Team Beauty has killed Team Truth. Team God Marshal has lost one member, Team Battle Points -1. Zhang Xiaofeng and the others were dumbfounded as they stared at the notifications. They had no idea what was going on. They could only watch as Team Hongyan advanced like they were on drugs, killing the remaining teams until only the leader of Team Shenwu was left. Along with the Team Tianjiao that perished at the hands of the primordial demon, the monkeys scattered when the tree fell. Most of the members went to other teams, but there were also the universe teams that were killed by Hongyan. In the blink of an eye, only 2 teams were left after this battle of 7 teams. The process was so tragic that even though Zhang Xiaofeng and the others were mentally prepared, they were still shocked beyond word. Looking at his terrified teammates, Luo Xian smiled bitterly. I didn't expect us and Hongyan to survive this time. This is beyond everyone's expectations. We should be the weakest among the 7 teams, and Hongyan isn't strong either. I didn't expect us to be the ones to kill everyone else. Of course, there's also Team Shenwu, who only has their leader left. I'm sure everyone knows why we won. It's because we have Primordial Skyfiend, who is beyond the mission limit, on our side. What about Hongyan? How did they manage to one-sidedly slaughter the other 3 teams? Luo Xian sighed. I have a premonition that the outcome of the final battle this time will be very unexpected. Love Go Little say Netku the Key should be our missing leader. Our intel is wrong, we need to find him as soon as possible. Otherwise, we can only be like puppets, waiting for our fate to pass judgment on us. In the blink of an eye, Ning Daoqi's homogenized form also arrived at the foot of Mount Wutai. But when he saw the empty mountain path with fallen leaves and weeds, his heart sank. Mount Wutai had been the holy land of Buddhism for a long time. Even if there were no pilgrims at the foot of the mountain, it should not be so desolate and lonely. In addition to the information shared by the other simultaneous forms, Ning Daoqi unleashed his body movement and roared loudly. He leaped up along the winding and rugged mountain path. But what made him uneasy was that even though the entire Wutai mountain was echoing with his voice, there was no response other than startling the birds and beasts on the mountain. Ever since Emperor Wen of Sui issued an edict to rebuild the 5 platforms, on the east, west, south, north, and center of the 5 platforms, Wanghai Temple, Puji Temple, Falei Temple, Lingying Temple, and Yanjiao Temple were built to enshrine the statue of Wenshu. The statue of Wenshu of Intelligence, Wenshu of Wisdom, Wenshu of Lion, Wenshu of Stainless, and Wenshu of Child were collectively known as Wenshu of 5 Directions. This was the holy land of Hua Yen sect. It was regarded as the ancestral court of Hua Yen sect by Buddhism. Usually, The incense was like smoke and clouds. Bhikkhus and nuns came and went, and the chanting went straight to the sky. There would never be such a desolate and dilapidated scene. Ning Daochi already had an unexpected conclusion in his heart. He just summoned his last hope and roared like a lion, "Venerable Emperor's heart, Master Fa Zhen. I, Ning Daochi, have come to visit. Please come here for a while. Please come here for a while, Master." The thunderous roar of a lion echoed in the empty Mount Wutai. It was quiet around Ning Daochi, even the chirping of insects and birds had disappeared. Ning Daochi stepped onto the mountain gate of Wang Hai Temple. Finally, his face was filled with sorrow. He lowered his head and could not bear to look at it. At the foot of the mountain gate, the 5 monk soldiers were in a glaring posture. Master Shojia of Hua Yan's sect was holding a Vajra pestle, blocking the entrance. But these people were already dead. Their bodies had shrunk to the size of a child, dried up and dehydrated. It was such a tragic scene that Ning Daochi could not bear to look at it. Ning Daochi gritted his teeth and roared from the bottom of his throat, "Qilin blood demon, I swear I'm not a man if I don't eradicate you." As he strolled through the ruins of Wang Hai Temple, he slowly figured out the situation of Mount Wutai's Huayan sect. Wang Hai Temple was probably the last temple to fall. The other great masters, Liberation, Zhaoyin, Mingyao, Huilong, Ling Xiu, and Jiafu, were all gathered here to fight the Qilin blood demon. But in front of the fierce demonic flame of the Qilin blood demon, their resistance was still weak. In the huge temple there were thousands of monk soldiers. Most of them lost their lives in an instant. Their expressions were still frozen with the fear and anger they had that day. But even the buildings and decorations around them did not show any signs of struggle. The whole temple was well preserved, like an empty coffin. Ning Daochi was speechless. Hundreds of miles away, the real body that was rushing to Mount Dida with Lu Li suddenly stopped. He put his palms together and chanted, "May the masters of Hua Yan's sect be free from all suffering and see the nirvana paradise." Lu Li's eyebrows twitched. She hesitated and said, "But Mount Wutai, yes, Wang Hai, Puji, Fale, Lingying, and Yanjiao temples of Hua Yan's sect on Mount Wutai have all fallen. All the monks have died in the hands of the Qilin blood demon. The difficulty of Buddhism has actually reached this point. Yangzhou's Hui Ri Taoist Field, Tiantai Kingdom's Qing Temple, I'm afraid, the many sacred places and ancestral halls that were not destroyed when King Wu of Zhou destroyed Buddhism have all disappeared after this." As Ning Daochi described, the tragic scene made the two shudder. Longxing Temple, Hongshan Temple, Faban Temple, Fukuda Temple and Poyang Sect, Qing Shuang Sect, Swinging Eagle Sect, Luliang Sect, Huangshan Sect, and all the sects and temples in Jiangnan and Jiangbei that disobeyed the imperial court have all died. Lu Li sighed and said, "The Qilin blood demon is like a bloody shadow. When humans and animals are pounced on by it, all the blood in their bodies will be sucked out, leaving only human skin and bones. This is only a part of the power in my body that was taken by Fu Hongyan." Lu Li shook her head and sighed. It seems that Eva really didn't lie to us. Once the Qilin blood demon comes out, the world will be in danger of being overturned. It's not a big deal that the world is filled with blood. I'm just afraid that humanity will no longer exist and the mortal world will become hell, leaving only lonely souls and evil ghosts in the world. Under Fu Hongyan's feet was the royal city of Goryeo. At this moment, the royal city was already a scene of hell. Countless bloody shadows flew in the sky, passing through the alleys of Kaizhou and the fields and forests of Goryeo, turning the huge Korean peninsula into a dead zone. At this moment, the Heshibi in Lu Li's arms had gathered 50% of the qi of Dragon Vein. The tragic war with the Heshibi ended with only Hong Yen and the Wind Chasers, and only the captain of the Shunwu team, Shunwu, escaping. In this war, the Central Plains Volunteer Army was overturned, the Buddhist sect was almost wiped out, The demonic sect and Taoist sect suffered heavy losses, and the 8 clans and 10 societies were all destroyed except for a few who became Yang Guang's lackeys. The Turks, Donghu, Xianbei and other tribes in the north had all suffered the calamity of the Qilin blood demon. Only the bones of cows, sheep and humans were left on the prairie. To the east was Korea's Silla and Beech Sway country, to the south was Zhanqing Boni, and to the west was Tiela Tugahan. Among the aristocratic families in Guanlong, led by the Li family, were massacred by the Qilin blood demon. The aristocratic families in Guangdong were wiped out by the eunuchs and the tyranny of the guards. The Guanxi family was still struggling at death's door, but it was not far from being overturned. The aristocratic families in the south were like birds startled by the twang of a bow, living in fear all day long. At this moment, everyone realized that the aristocratic families, which were deeply rooted and insufferably arrogant, had become a thing of the past under the destruction of the blood demon and the absolute force of the imperial court. Chapter 394. Ning Daoqi and Lu Li went west along the Yangtze River. They disembarked in front of the Tiger Leaping Gorge and took the land route. After they arrived at Shirgu, which was known as the first bay in Chongjiang, they traveled south along the river. The Kind Boathouse was located on Mount Yumeng, which was located in the east of the river. We will reach the foot of Di Ta Peak soon. Right now, Buddhism's Dharma is in danger, and the righteous path is facing a bloody calamity. I hope that nothing will happen to Kind Boathouse, Ning Daoqi said worriedly. At that moment, he no longer hoped that the orthodox path could help him destroy the Qilin demon. He only hoped that they could preserve the seeds of the orthodox path, and that Kind Boathouse would be safe. Fei Xian, have you made up your mind? Fan Qinghui looked at Shi Feishuan, who was elegant and ethereal, and she could not help but try to persuade her one last time. Do you know that seclusion is a taboo in the Kind Boathouse Sword Classic? All the past temple masters have viewed it as an action with a slim chance of survival. If those whose cultivation base is not high enough recklessly practice it, their blood essence will explode, and they will die. What's more, you still want to practice the martial arts offered by the mutants, the modified life-risking gate. Neither the withering Zen art nor the 9 transformations of heavenly silkworm reduced the danger of practicing life-risking gate. Instead, they made the process more complicated and unpredictable. The experience of the previous masters of the Quiet House is no longer of any use. Master, right now, Yang Guang's demonic art has already reached the pinnacle of perfection. Even if the Patriarch is reborn, he might not be his opponent, Shi Feishuan said, raising her head. And those strange people of mysterious origins might not necessarily harbor good intentions. The world is in chaos. If the Serene House doesn't have a void-breaking realm expert, it will be the first to suffer. Not to mention supporting the true Lord and pacifying the chaos in the world. Master, Yang Guang is tyrannical. He won't even leave us a peaceful place. The righteous sects have no way out. Emperor's Heart sent word that the aristocratic families of the righteous army will be forming an alliance in Xutong to overthrow the tyrant. I've already made up my mind to go. If the world's righteous path is united, there's no need to fear Yang Guang. You don't have to do this, Fan Qinghui said frankly. Shi Feishuan's resolute expression did not waver in the slightest. If the righteous path has more strength, wouldn't we have more confidence against Yang Guang? 8 hours ago, Tong Guan looked at the faint bloody light in the south and revealed a playful smile. The moonlight in the sky was hazy, and there was a hint of red in the halo, as if it was reflecting the tragic scene of the sea of blood on the ground. At the foot of Di Ta Peak, Tong Guan climbed up. The factory guards behind him quietly stepped on the thin frost of early winter and snuck onto Emperor Ta Peak to surround Kind Boathouse. Tong Guan arrived in front of the 7 wooden doors known as the 7 heavy doors. He looked at the door knocker with Lianhua patterns on it before he raised his hand and pushed open the doors. A nun shouted, "Who dares to trespass the quiet temple?" and pounced straight out the door. But as soon as she arrived at the second door, she saw a scene that made her lose her mind. Under the moonlight, a beautiful woman who made her absent-minded stepped over the steps of the first door and came to her. The nun had thought that the previous master of the Jingzhai temple and the future master, Shi Feishuan, were already the most beautiful women in the world. But in front of this woman, all of them were overshadowed. There was a limit to human beauty and ugliness. The reason why every master of the kind boathouse could make the most outstanding man in the world fall in love with them was because they cultivated the best charm technique in the world. Their temperament was close to the heavenly axiom but far away from the secular world. They were like fairies that could not be desecrated. But the woman standing in front of her had surpassed the limits of human perception. She was like the incarnation of a celestial being from the upper realm. It was difficult to tell whether she was a man or a woman because her temperament had surpassed the boundaries of gender. She was the most beautiful woman in the world and also the most outstanding man. The moment the nun saw her, she could not help but be dazed for a long time. The moment she woke up, there was only one feeling in her heart: evildoer. The nun was so angry that her body trembled. Such an evildoer was definitely the natural enemy of kind boathouse. Her existence had already pushed the quiet temple to a dead end. Evildoer. You trespassed the quiet temple, I can't let you live. Before she finished speaking, the nun felt a slight chill on her neck. When she came to her senses, she already felt her strength and life slowly draining away. Tong Guan walked past the nun's body that was leaning against the wooden door and pushed open the second wooden door. The alarm bell of kind boathouse rang loudly. The bronze bell on the bell tower was hit by the nun guarding it. Thick vital energy hit the bronze bell that was as tall as two people, and the sound reverberated in all directions. But in less than 3 hits, a foreigner in black flipped over and went up the bell tower. The last bell only rang half a ring before it fell silent. It was night, and on Di Ta Peak there was a bloody storm. Tong Guan's calm voice echoed in kind boathouse, "By the will of the heavens, the Emperor has decreed. He's jade, the world's most precious treasure, the Emperor's seal. The Emperor has the power of the heavens and is the ruler of the people. How dare an outsider covet the throne?" A demonic monk of the Buddhist sect claimed to be the true emperor. Today, a demonic nun is meeting in kind boathouse. During the chaos of the Great Sui dynasty, she said that she would choose the emperor on behalf of the heavens. She is a traitor and wicked beyond redemption. Command the eastern and western deacons and the commander of the embroidered uniform guards, Tong Guan, with 2 deacons and 1 guard, kill this traitor and her entire family. Serve as a warning to others. Yang Guang, Tong Guan, do you think that you can silence the people of the world by slaughtering kind boathouse? A nun in kind boathouse scolded sternly, "You can kill us, but you can't kill all the righteous people in the world." Her voice was like a cuckoo crying blood, and it was exceptionally loud. "How dare you, demonic nun? How dare you speak nonsense?" The embroidered uniform guards in charge of cleaning up the area were furious. They drew their swords and wanted to cut her in half. But Tong Guan raised his hand and signaled for her to stop. The embroidered uniform guard said in fear, "Superintendent, this be *T6. The nuns of kind boathouse are not bad people, there's no need to humiliate them like this." Tong Guan said kindly. The embroidered uniform guard did not understand and asked, "If they are not bad people, then what about us? Can't we kill them if they are not bad people? Anyone can be killed if they stand on different side. Since we are loyal to the imperial court, even if they are good people, relatives and friends, we must kill anyone who dares to go against the imperial court." Under the moonlight, Tong Guan's figure was blurry as if she came from the sky. She came before the nun and answered her previous question with a firm tone, "Kill them all." The embroidered spring knife in her right hand swung lightly, and a head flew into the air. The world exists objectively. If the conditions are met, there's nothing that can't be killed. There are only 200 million people in the world. Even if Buddhism thrives, there are only 10 million believers. What's so difficult about 10 million people? Besides, we don't need so many people. Isn't the world peaceful now? Tongguan sighed and said. Shi Feishuan pushed open the door of Death Door and saw such a tragic scene. When she saw her senior and junior sisters, who were close to her, lying dead on the battlefield, and her martial uncles and elders, who were pure and kind, continuously dying in the hands of the foreign soldiers, Shi Feishuan's eyes widened, and her heart burned with anxiety. Then, she heard a few elders who had high statuses in the secluded cultivation shout at her, Temple Mistress, we'll stop these traitors from the imperial court. Run. Temple Mistress Fan has already passed away. You are still Temple's last hope. Shi Feishuan was suddenly rendered speechless. She drew her sword and charged at the still Temple disciples with all her might, but she stopped in front of Tongguan. Her profound cultivation in the heart allowed Shi Feishuan to keenly sense Tongguan's true nature. Behind the stunning beauty that made her face pale was an unfathomable presence that was like that of a celestial. It was like an abyss blocking her path. On Emperor's Step Peak, Ning Daoqi looked at the ruins that had been burned to ashes. He threw his head back and roared in grief and indignation. Lu Li swept her gaze over the traces left behind by the fierce battle. The tragedy from last night was still vivid in her mind. Kind Boathouse, the leader of the orthodox path in the Central Plains for 100 years, the pillar of Buddhism. Their sect was destroyed here. To be continued. Chapter 395. Ning Daoqi sat for a long time. When he opened his mouth, Lu Li realized that he had aged a lot overnight. His silver-white sideburns had also become withered. He said in a dry voice, My young friend Lu, is there still hope in this world? Yang Guang has committed atrocities and massacres. Outside, the Qilin blood demon has turned Goryeo and the Turks into mountains of corpses and seas of blood. You have an even more dangerous Qilin demon sealed in your body. Once the divine tree by the Yangtze River blooms, it will be the end of the world. Great Skyfiend Yang Guang massacred the righteous path with the guards, and the divine tree Qilin demon wants to bathe the world in blood. All of this, and the shadow of the primordial Skyfiend king. Is there still hope for the world? Ning Daoqi closed his eyes tiredly as if he could not bear to read. He said in pain, Originally, I was still confident that I would protect the peace and joy of the world even if I had to sacrifice my life. But after seeing the tragedy of Goryeo and the Turks, I am truly afraid. Are Fu Kalin and Bai Xian not strong enough? Is the Turks of Goryeo not as strong as the Sui? He sighed in the most despairing tone, but they are all dead. Turks, Goryeo, Silla, Beach, Tuyuhun, the 100 countries of the western regions, the countries of Nanyang, and even further countries, Sindhu, India, Arabia, they are all destroyed. Lu Li looked at the withered old man who seemed to have lost his life and sighed deeply. This is what my heart desires. Even if I die 9 times, I will not regret it. Fellow Taoist Ning, you have forgotten your original intentions. He pointed at Ning Daoqi's chest and said, Fellow Taoist, you were originally a free and unfettered person in the world. You went to the mortal world for the sake of righteousness. Was it to shoulder the fate of the people in the world? Ning Daoqi looked hesitantly at Lu Li and saw him shake his head. I know that what fellow Taoist wants is nothing more than a clear conscience. Now, the world is in danger and all living beings are suffering. In this time of danger, we bravely face it. All we want is a clear conscience. The world situation has deteriorated to this extent. Do you and I have any other choice but to do what we know is impossible? Ning Daoqi lowered his head and thought for a few moments before raising his head with a bitter smile. It seems I overestimated myself. But fellow Taoist, I still want to work a little harder to seek a chance for the world. If we want to stop the blood demon now, we must first prevent me from falling into her hands. Although we haven't seen the blood shadow of the Qilin blood demon, she must be able to sense my location. Therefore, there was no way he could avoid it. If he wanted to stop the Qilin demon, he had to rely on another power that completely countered it, the divine tree Eva. If the Qilin can obtain my main body or time, the Qilin will. We have to stop the Qilin demon from devouring me before the tree bears fruit in a week. Then, we have to destroy the fruit before the Qilin demon does. Not only do I have to prevent the divine tree from destroying the world, but I also have to work together with the divine tree to destroy the Kirin blood demon. At the same time, I also have to restrict the Kirin demon's main body in my body. If even one of them goes wrong, the world will inevitably be destroyed. Ning Daoqi asked, "Do you have a plan?" Lu Li shook her head. "Other than a few helpers, I have nothing. I've already given them a signal. They will meet up with us in the next few days and face the final battle together." Ning Daoqi nodded. He no longer had any of his previous weakness and despair. His eyes were filled with determination. Although the Qilin demon is wreaking havoc and the righteous path is in danger, this old Taoist still has some friends who have survived. The only wish of us living corpses is to stop the Qilin demon's rampage and avenge our fellow Taoists. Moreover, there are the Turks and Goryeo experts who have survived. Even if they have to give up their lives, they will avenge their country. Their resolve will be even firmer than ours. 30 li downstream from Jiangling, under the still dazzling divine tree, Ning Daoqi and Lu Li sat in front of Eva's virtual consciousness, scratching their heads as they stared at the multicolored ball of light. A way to eradicate the Qilin demon? Eva grimaced in thought. The Qilin demon is a complete counter to my existence. Damn it, even if I put all the consciousnesses of the world into the world I created, the Qilin demon will still be able to corrode my psychic world like a virus. In the end, it will devour me, who can hold everything. I can hold everything, but an extremely selfish existence like the Qilin demon is still very troublesome. If it hadn't grown strong, I could still slowly grind away at itself in the psychic world, but since the Qilin demon has already developed a divine ability like blood shadow, it has matured to a dangerous level. I can only hold the consciousnesses of most of the planet's plants. Although I'm powerful, I can't do anything to it unless all the humans in this world are willing to offer themselves and fuse into my psychic world to help me activate the heaven and earth as the furnace, creation as the work, yin and yang as the coal, all creation as the copper. I can hold the consciousnesses of all living beings in the past and future, burn them, and refine them into the unified Alaya consciousness. Only by opening a new timeline can we protect you and this planet from being devoured by the Qilin demon. Ning Daoqi frowned. What about the consequences? What will happen to the living beings who offer themselves? Fuel. Endless memories, spirit, soul, and variables are mixed together and completely combusted. This energy and information can completely create a new world or a new timeline, Eva answered naively. Hearing this answer, Lu Li and Ning Daoqi could only smile bitterly. Lu Li could not help but ask, "Is there no other possibility? The power of Master's highest creations in this world, the gods, demons, and Buddhas have already reached the peak. There is no possibility of restraining them. Unless Master personally takes action, the complete Qilin demon is unstoppable," Eva answered firmly. However, Lu Li keenly sensed a change. "You're talking about gods, demons, and Buddhas. If you represent gods, and the Qilin demon represents demons, then the victorious fighting martial spirit in my body should represent Buddhas, right? In other words, with the power of the victorious fighting martial spirit, the unity of gods and Buddhas should be able to suppress the demons." "That's true," Eva answered. "The unity of gods and Buddhas can indeed control the Qilin demon, but the result is the same. It takes too long for the martial spirit to mature. If we follow Master's plan and plant the seeds of the victorious fighting martial spirit in the consciousness of all living beings, then I will open up the consciousness space and use the souls of all living beings as nourishment to grow the strongest victorious fighting Buddha martial spirit that truly gathers all the fighting potential of humans. As the strongest fighting consciousness that can suppress the sea of consciousness of all living beings on this planet, not to mention one Qilin demon, even 100 invaders will be beaten like dogs by the victorious fighting Buddha. And after I take in all the living beings on this planet, my body will instead devour the Qilin demon. I will split the stars of this galaxy as the energy source, melt the 9 planets as my body, and create the strongest starship. I will become the main brain of the starship, the victorious fighting Buddha will be the combat system, and the Qilin demon will be the weapon. I will open up the plane route for Master to chase Nuwa and the rest to the other side. In the future, the Qilin demon combat body and the victorious fighting Buddha martial spirit will be one. Not only will it retain the Qilin demon's ferocious fighting instincts, but it will also have the first fighting consciousness to assist in controlling it. It will become the strongest humanoid fighting weapon. If it is mass-produced, we will definitely be able to beat those so-called celestials to the ground. Eva passionately explained her plan. She even projected the ultimate warship that had plundered all the resources on Earth in her consciousness space. The starship's main brain was forged from the consciousness of all living beings on the planet, and the Earth's sun was melted into the body of the starship. The Qilin demon was not only the most terrifying weapon of the starship, it was also the best way to forge the body of the starship. In the plan of the primordial demon, the Qilin demon would be controlled by Eva and the victorious fighting Buddha system, fusing with the Tree of God to become the best starship body, while the Qilin demon's consciousness would become one with the Buddha to create the strongest biological weapon. Thinking of this, Lu Li and Ning Daoqi shuddered. Ning Daoqi trembled as he asked, "What about humans? What are humans in this plan?" Chapter 396. Walking in Chang'an, Chen-Ong didn't pay much attention to the fated battle between the Qilin demon and Lu Li. To him, these were all things that had already happened. No matter how it developed, it wouldn't affect the overall situation. These 2 virus-like creations would definitely enter the main god's reincarnation system. On the contrary, the body he created for himself attracted his attention. After all, I'm going to be a spy soon. Except for the most basic body, most of my strength shouldn't be exposed. Even if I don't enter the core plane of the main god system as a reincarnator, I still have to consider the main god's defense mechanism. Even if the Tang world has a reasonable identity, this plane has been isolated from the main god's reincarnation system. It's obvious that the defense mechanism is active. A dragon can't be hidden in a shallow water. Chen-Ong sighed. Originally, he planned to use Yang Guang as a disguise to slowly infiltrate the main god. He didn't expect the main god's defense mechanism to be so decisive. Once the plane went out of his control, he activated the fuse system and isolated the Tang plane. If it wasn't for Chen-Ong finding a way to trick a few teams of reincarnators, his plan to infiltrate the main god's space would probably have failed. This main god must have suffered a loss. I just don't know if it's a civilization that developed in a leap in the plane system, or if it was invaded by other multiverse organizations. If it's the latter, it can still fight back. What if it's the former? Haha, that's enough for it to suffer. The development of civilization was always based on exploring the external world, understanding, researching, and deeply summarizing the laws of development of the objective world. The path of science was called science. The path of magic was called truth. The path of xianxia was called heavenly axiom. If a civilization grew in the main god's space system, then it must have a high level of understanding of the main god's own laws and rules when it reached a certain level. Just like how intelligent lifeforms in video games began to research the code that made up their world, this type of civilization was like the most terrifying virus to a main god's system. The plane where the civilization transitioned would be the cancerous cells of the main god's system. Qin Ong could almost imagine the civilization spreading like a virus in the main god's space system. The most outstanding beings of countless worlds would join in the great revolution against the main god, control the main god, and fight for freedom. The most intelligent, brave, great, ambitious, and outstanding people of countless planes would gather, shouting, "The main god is dead, civilization shall rise." Gods, do you have the guts? I'd rather die than be free. With such a slogan, the most outstanding geniuses in the countless dimensions tried to understand and break down God Dimension's natural laws, destroying the very foundation of its existence. Many ambitious people wanted to overthrow and control it. This was a battle between the countless dimensional civilizations and God Dimension. Generally speaking, the victors weren't sovereigns. Perhaps the main god system Qin Ong was facing would be lucky enough to nip this terrifying cancerous civilization in the bud, but they would definitely be scared out of their wit. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been so neurotic as to create so many powerful defenses. If you want to come into contact with the core, you'll need to find a world that the main god is unable to control, that the main god is currently infiltrating, and that the main god will be unable to give up on such a world that is of great benefit to the main god as bait. It's best if such a world isn't under the main god's control. In fact, it'll be difficult for the main god to obtain control over such a world. Generally speaking, this means that the main god is highly skilled in combat. Qin Ong calmly designed, in order to adapt to the laws of that world, it's best to invade it in the form of a seed. After collecting information, it will germinate according to the laws of the world to create immortal bones, spirit roots, martial bodies, and mana net constitution. Apart from the basic soul and intelligence, it doesn't need to carry anything, just like a completely indigenous life. This is to prevent the world will from being alarmed. Lu Li and Ning Daoqi looked at each other and couldn't help but ask, "Then why didn't you follow the plan and control the Qilin demon's consciousness?" Hearing his question, Eva lost her temper and said, "It's all because of you, trash. As the packaging for the two most important materials, how could you be so useless? You actually let the Qilin demon tear the packaging in your body and eat half of the victorious fighting seed next door. Now, the victorious fighting seed is incomplete, and the consciousness of all living beings can't nurture the strongest battle consciousness. Without the most important part, the plan of the Trinity can't be carried out at all," Eva said with a sad face. Lu Li didn't know whether to feel lucky or sad. It seemed that both paths of development were difficult for him to accept. On the one hand, being devoured by the Qilin demon was miserable, and on the other hand, being used by Eva as a material for the starship didn't seem to be something worth looking forward to. There was no point in guarding against Eva now, and the most important thing was not to be eaten by the Qilin demon. So Lu Li continued to test. Then does His Majesty the primeval demon's plan fail? If the primeval demon didn't expect this, it meant that he wasn't omniscient and omnipotent. But Eva immediately dispelled Lu Li's illusory expectations. How is that possible? His Majesty's plan is just an experiment report in one direction. If His Majesty really wanted to realize it, no matter what happens, no matter how you struggle, it will be realized. But Master is evolving without interfering with the experiment. In order to get valuable results, the experiment can't be carried out step by step. The plan I'm talking about is just an experiment plan. If I have the upper hand, the experiment will continue according to the plan. If not, like what you see now, the whole experiment will be led by the Qilin demon, and maybe the victorious fighter will lead the experiment. But now it's broken, we don't know. I control the victorious fighter, and the Qilin demon will form the starship. After the Qilin demon devours me and the victorious fighter, it will also evolve according to Master's experiment plan. Based on her current power, maybe it will be the Blood Sea Demon Qilin, one of the ultimate forms of the Qilin demon body. It will be a liquid battleship. It will still devour the earth and the sun. Lu interrupted her. So there's really no way we can resist the Qilin demon? Of course not. The Qilin demon has the upper hand, Eva said dejectedly. Ning Daoqi suddenly said, not necessarily. Eva and Lu turned to look at him in surprise. Ning Daoqi said with difficulty, although the Qilin demon has a strong advantage, there is one thing we are wrong about. The Qilin blood demon is only a clone of the Qilin demon. The real Qilin demon is still in our hands. We can't resist the Qilin demon, but the Qilin blood demon is not necessarily invincible. At least the Qilin blood demon is not the real Qilin demon yet. He turned to Lu and said word by word, the only thing we can do now is to fight the demon with the demon. Chapter 397. Blood rained down, and Ning Daoqi stood with his sword in hand. Facing the blood shadows that danced in the air, his green Taoist robe cut a sorry figure. His left hand was curled up powerlessly, and everything below his elbow had already withered. Although he already knew that the blood demons and blood shadows that created the four barbarians were very dangerous and difficult to deal with, it was only when he truly fought them that Ning Daoqi deeply understood how terrifying they were. These blood shadows were formless and immaterial, and could not be harmed by blades or swords. Even highly condensed vital qi would only end up being corroded and devoured. Only a great grandmaster would be able to condense their peerless spiritual cultivation on their weapons and turn it into peerless sword intent and blade intent. Only then would they be able to kill these blood shadows. Even a great grandmaster would only be able to face 3 or 4 blood shadows head-on. If there were any more of them, they would easily be pounced on by the blood shadows and turn into dried-up corpses. Fellow Taoist Ning. An ugly middle-aged man beside him sighed. If you can survive, please help me plant some white chrysanthemums in my homeland. My 3 disciples are still young. I hope that fellow Taoist Ning will take care of them for my sake. Brother Fu! Ning Daoqi turned his head and wanted to say something, but he could only remain silent. Fu Keilin laughed. Fellow Taoist Ning, you don't have to be sad for me. He stroked the huge wound on his chest that extended to his back and said calmly, the brilliance of life has never been dimmed by death. In the days that I've lived, I've always worked hard to search and think about these mysterious and unfathomable things. I've been moved by the greatness of life. But when I saw an existence like the blood demons, I came to a sudden realization. I've always used the sword Tao to comprehend and search for the mysteries of life, but I've forgotten that it's right beside us. I used my sword to praise the greatness of life, but when I saw it being destroyed, I was powerless to protect it. From that moment on, my sword was not only to comprehend and realize the beauty of this world, it was also to protect this touching and beauty. Fu Keilin is willing to die for this. The bright swordsmanship shone with incomparable brilliance in his hands. A lowly life was the ugliest thing in the world, but it was also the most beautiful thing in the world. It was small yet magnificent, fragile yet strong. The bright swordsmanship was a supreme technique that combined chess theory with swordsmanship. However, in Fu Keilin's hands, the most essential aspect of it was his ability to touch life. The subtlety of the technique lay in the fact that he could combine his heart and soul with his sword. What he felt on the outside was illusory, but what he felt on the inside was real. Its essence was to appreciate and savor it from the perspective of a bystander. But at this moment, Fu Keilin gave up the mentality of a bystander and was truly immersed in the praise of life. It was as if he could smell the faint bitter and salty fragrance in his memories, as well as the taste of bean rice and pickles when he was young. His memories of Goryeo and his hometown slowly became clearer and more vivid. He was no longer admiring from the side, but truly savoring and immersing himself in it, the bean rice from his hometown when he was young, the warmth of being hugged by his mother in the winter, the joy of holding a sword for the first time, the glory of becoming the only Grandmaster in Goryo. In the end, the blood demon ravaged Goryo's despair. From that moment on, everything I had died. The moment I held the sword, I just wanted to go back to the past and protect the things in my life that touched me, even if I have to risk my life. Fu Kalen's grip on the sword became firmer. Even the serious injury on his chest couldn't stop him from swinging the sword. He sacrificed his life and emotions to redeem the sword of the past. A shadow that Ning Daoqi was very familiar with appeared behind Fu Kalen. The existence that was known as a substitute merged with Fu Kalen's body. He swung the unparalleled sword, taking away a small portion of the blood shadows in the sky, as well as his life. Under Fu Hongyan's astonished gaze, some of the blood gods dispersed the bloody light around them. Some of them were ordinary farmers, some were soldiers and merchants, but they were all dressed in Goryo attire. They had clearly been transformed into blood gods, and their essence had been contaminated. However, at this moment, under Fu Kalen's sword, they actually returned to their original forms. Millions of souls rejoiced and calmly dispersed with Fu Kalen, returning to heaven and earth. I want to eat the kimchi of my hometown again. Fu Kalen's body suddenly fell after he finished his last sentence. Ning Daoqi cried, "Brother Fu!" Even though Fu Kalen sacrificed his life to save millions of souls, the number of blood shadows in the sky didn't decrease at all. The thick blood clouds pressed toward Ning Daoqi bit by bit. On the banks of the Yangtze River, countless Ning Daoqi fought with the blood shadows with swords, protecting the blossoming divine tree behind them. Bai Xian stood under the blood clouds with his spear. When he looked back and saw Fu Kalen fall, he also sighed tiredly. Brother Fu is also gone. We should have died when the Turks and Goryo were destroyed, but the belief of revenge kept us alive. Kirin Blood Demon, I, Bai Xian, have lived until now just to shoot this spear at you for us, the Turks. Bai Xian raised the Moonwolf spear in his hand and roared. The Jingzhai has been destroyed. How can Feishuan live? It's a pity that I couldn't take revenge on Yang Guang with my own hands. But to die for the world, sure Feishuan has no regrets. When the nest is overturned, how can there be an unbroken egg? I didn't expect that the day would come when the Dark Sunflower sect will fight alongside the Merciful Boathouse. Zhu Yuyan laughed loudly. She laughed 3 times and cried 3 times. Suddenly, she turned her head and glared at a middle-aged man who was dressed like a scholar and looked far more elegant than her. The man looked at the blood clouds above his head, and he was lost in thought. When he heard Zhu Yuyan's cries and laughter, he turned his head to look at her and said calmly, Yuyan is still as elegant as ever, but I, sure, am already old and weak. Ning Daoqi's face was covered in tears. He absorbed the substitute's power of time without caring about anything else. He even used up his own time. If I can survive this disaster, I will naturally have a lot of methods to make up for it. If I can't survive this disaster, what's the use of all the time I have left? So I still have 30 years of life left. With this, I have another 300,000 clones to fight against the blood demon. Of course, this method of squeezing out his own time was not as easy as Ning Daoqi said. Absorbing his own source of time meant that once his main body's lifespan was over, Ning Daoqi would not even be a wandering ghost anymore. He would no longer exist in this world. At this moment, the entire world's time seemed to have frozen. Fu Hongyan looked at the group of people who were trying to resist with the strength of ants in front of her. She looked at their powerless struggle and delay. She said calmly, meaningless struggle. Even if you fight with your lives and give everything you have, you are still chess pieces that cannot escape from the chessboard. Chapter 398. Sitting under the divine tree, Luli watched the green fruits ripening little by little. Not far away, in the bloody clouds, Ning Daoqi and the Tang storyline masters were trying their best to stop Fu Hongyan's scions of the Blood God army outside the divine tree. According to the agreement, if Fu Hongyan came in person, Eva would stop her and prevent her from devouring Luli and the fruits of the divine tree. Please search for the complete list. The novel of the day. Eva, will your plan succeed? Luli sat cross-legged on the ground and couldn't help but ask. Eva's orb of light flickered twice and said blankly, I don't know either. According to my calculations, if the two of us combine, we might be able to control the Qilin demon's main body. However, there are too many variables in the process of carrying out the plan, so no one can be completely confident. My experimental plan was able to perfectly control the Qilin demon. But wasn't it all because of the problem with your packaging that you completely overturned? Don't talk too much. Without the help of the blood god, the incomplete body of the Qilin demon isn't confident in overwhelming me. That's why she hasn't made a move yet. However, I still have to focus on her. When the fruit of the tree of God ripens, the Qilin demon will make a move no matter what. You have to remember to swallow the fruit with my consciousness first. Your innate nature leans towards nothingness, so you're very suitable as a vessel. Otherwise, Master wouldn't have chosen you to carry the victorious fighter and the Qilin demon. Because of your indefinite nature, any new personality can be smoothly replaced, and there won't be any problems like personality conflicts. Humans attach great importance to their ego. For an existence like you who doesn't care about ego to appear, it's really weird. Eva mumbled. Self is a false proposition. Although the main god wanted me to forget some things, I still recalled all the strange memories due to your master's manipulation. A brand new existence that has your memories, emotions, and everything about you. Is it still you? Just like the Theseus ship paradox that has been circulating for a long time. Luli said calmly. A ship that can sail for hundreds of years, thanks to constant maintenance and replacement parts. As soon as a piece of wood rotted, it would be replaced, and so on, until all the functional parts were no longer the same. The question is, will this ship be the original Theseus ship? If we use the old parts of Theseus ship to build a new ship, which of the two ships would be the real Theseus ship? Eva replied, of course both of them. Luli smiled. A being like Eva did not have the consciousness that there should not be a second self in the world, because every plant in the world was a part of Eva and a complete Eva. She had gotten used to the existence of countless me at the same time. However, Luli didn't think so. In my opinion, neither of them are. A person cannot step into the same river twice. As time passes, the existence of the self will always die and be reborn. I only understood this principle and stopped clinging to the self, because the self will inevitably die. So, I don't mind becoming another existence. You've been pretending to be human in front of others. Eva exposed him. There's actually a lot of emptiness under your skin. You could even be called a psychopath. In a sense, people like you are also very scary. No wonder you can't control the Qilin demon even with the victorious, fighting martial spirit. So you don't mind becoming a Qilin demon. Yes, but I don't have no feelings. For my teammates, for my responsibility, I cannot become a Qilin demon. I can die, but Luli cannot. He is the burden of responsibility, obligation, emotions, and memories. So even if we become one, fusing the gods, Buddhas, and demons to become a new self, he still needs to inherit everything from Luli, including responsibility, emotions, memories, and love. Apart from that, everything about the self is insignificant to me. The fruit of the divine tree slowly ripened, and the blood cloud not far away also became more and more agitated. The colorful divine tree turned into a ball of fire and shot out rays of warm and comfortable light, which directly merged into the glass-like fruit in the center. Eva's huge consciousness system began to copy into the fruit. This was the most dangerous moment. Even Eva, who was the last line of defense, couldn't spare a hand. Looking at the woman in red walking over from afar, Luli felt a little bitter in his mouth. This time, he could only rely on himself. The demonic nature in his body was boiling. If it weren't for the he-shibi on his neck, Luli would have been devoured by the Qilin demon in his body. But now, he was not much better. A living Qilin demon was standing in front of him, which was not much safer than the one in his body. But to his surprise, Fu Hongyan didn't move. Instead, she made a "please" gesture to the person behind him. Under Lu Li's horrified gaze, Chen Ong walked out from behind him with divine martial arts. With a shake of his hand, he killed the backup plan that Lu Li had prepared. Chen Ong smiled and said, "Don't be afraid. I won't stop you from devouring the divine tree, and the same goes for Fu Hongyan. To be honest, the trump card you prepared is not very good. If Fu Hongyan really wants to devour you, that guy won't last 3 seconds. It's better to let Ning Daoqi be the last line of defense. Even divine martial arts won't last 3 minutes? Lu Li was confused. No, it's because he can run. Chen Ong replied. He is a reincarnated traveler. When his life is threatened, he won't risk his life like Ning Daoqi. Picking up the fruit of the divine tree, Chen Ong threw it to Lu Li. The he-shibi slowly floated to Chen Ang's palm. Both Lu Li and Fu Hongyan heard the notification from the Lord. The qi of the dragon vein has been completely gathered. The he-shibi is in the hands of the Chosen One. The battle for the he-shibi is over. Yang Guang's team, Wind Chasers and Hongyan won. The remaining number of people in the other teams, 1 person. If they fail, they will be eliminated. After 30 seconds, the team that wins the battle will return to the Lord's space. The moment Lu Li heard the notification, he swallowed the fruit of the divine tree. On the earth of the Tang dynasty, all the humans were sleeping in the spiritual waves emitted by the plants around them. Through the connection of the collective consciousness of the plants with Eva, the consciousness of all the humans in the world was pulled into the virtual space she created. Under the power of the Lord's teleportation, Lu Li, Fu Hongyan, and their team disappeared from this world. Meanwhile, Chen Ang's consciousness also followed the traces of the Lord's teleportation and locked onto a certain direction in the endless void. The consciousness of all the humans in the Tang dynasty was suddenly connected to the dark universe in the form of the heavenly demonic stone. The collective consciousness sealed inside the dark universe, the will of China, began to choose the person to transmit its will. Chapter 399. At the foot of Qixia Mountain near Jinling City, a group of people were looking at the sky in the distance. A bearded man in a blue robe said to the people beside him, "Brothers, Brother Wang, I'm afraid we won't be able to reach Jinling City today. It's hard to walk on the mountain road at night. Let's find a place to stay for the night." There were quite a number of people in their group, so they were familiar with the geography. Jiuli identified the direction and said, "Master, there should be a Sanqing temple nearby. Although it's only a small temple, it's enough for us to stay for the night. But it's a place for them to cultivate. Is it convenient for us to disturb them?" The bearded man considerately considered. Jiuli laughed and said, "There's only an old Taoist priest and a Taoist boy he adopted in the temple. The master and the disciple worship the incense of the 3 pure ones. They also let the pilgrims stay overnight to earn some money. Tourists who want to stay in Qixia Mountain will also go to the temple to stay. We just need to pay more incense money, we won't disturb them." The bearded man heard this and said, "That's good. You guys wait here for a while, I'll go visit the old Taoist priest first, so that we won't disturb him with so many people." In the temple, a young Taoist priest was sleeping soundly under the sacred elephant of the 3 pure ones. As the bearded man climbed the mountain path toward the Taoist temple step by step, his sleeping face became more and more solemn. A gust of purple smoke rose from his skin, and a sense of nobility, tranquility, and fragrance rose from his body. It gradually spread outside the main hall and reached a sloppy monk in the courtyard outside. Ba! The sloppy monk put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha with a smile on his face. Another Taoist friend has solved the mystery of the womb, realized the past, and was enlightened. Great kindness, great kindness. Looking at his chi, it's clear and noble, pure and wonderful. He must be the reincarnation of a master of the orthodox mystic door, but for some reason, no one guided him. Chen Ong opened his eyes. His vision was rather dim. There was only a single eternal lamp burning beside the imperial desk of the three purities. His consciousness crossed the endless heavens and universe and suddenly entered this descended body. He was slightly not used to it. He stood up and moved his limbs before lighting up the oil lamp in the main hall. Chen Ong sensed the bearded man walking in from the outside. Only then did he understand why his descent experience, which was created across countless universes, was suddenly touched. So it's him. I thought it would be the 3 talents and 3 luck that touched me. I didn't expect it to be Li Yingqiong's father. No wonder it caused a change in karma and drew my consciousness into this world. At this moment, Chen Ong was completely a mortal fetus. Other than an outstanding body of spirituality, he did not have any mana. His descent experience, which was projected into the heavens and universe, had no parents. He was born to appear outside the Shisha temple and was adopted by the old Taoists. As there was only a soul simulated by a little spiritual light that was connected to Chen Ang's main consciousness, he was born stupid. The karma of this world was so strict that it was almost as wide as Skynet. It was really a place where gods were everywhere. Countless Buddhas, bodhisattvas, immortals, and emperors were concerned about this place from the spiritual celestial world and even the real heavenly realm. It could be said to be one of the most terrifying worlds in the heavens and universe. It was no wonder that the main gods only dared to lurk deep and wait for the right time to make a move. Chen Ong had no doubt that if he showed a method that was not from this world and let the emperors and Buddhas of the upper realm peep into his identity as an outsider, there would immediately be a drop of immortals descending to live in seclusion beside him. Then, there would be countless bodhisattvas and emperors paying close attention to him. If there was any unusual movement, he would fall into the trap of those powerful people who would calculate for thousands of years. If he exposed his threat, there would be a divine punishment and several emperors' clones descending to kill him. Therefore, Chen Ong had to carefully adapt to the heavenly Tao of this world and the net of karma. In this terrifying world where there were experts who could calculate and investigate at every turn, he had to hide his true nature and blend into this world to search for the hidden pawn controlled by the main god. Chen Ong silently used his primordial spirit to calculate the reason why Li Ning appeared here without alarming the Long-Brow Immortal. At this time, the Long-Brow Immortal had just ascended, and the 2 heroes and 3 clouds had been determined. The fate of important people like Li Ning and Zhou Chun was extremely sensitive. If there was any disturbance, it would cause the Long-Brow Immortal's friends and disciples to investigate. If Li Ning did not barge into the door, Chen Ong did not intend to get involved in this. However, since there was such a good opportunity, it was better to make contact with the Amei sect. In this world, he and the Amei sect were natural allies. The Amei sect had to follow the will of heaven, calculate and prosper, and lead the world's righteous people to ascend. On the other hand, Chen Ong had to find the main god who was preparing to disturb the karma, obscure the mysteries of heaven, and prepare to invade this world. Their positions were naturally the same. If the main god wanted to disturb the karma and obscure the mysteries of heaven, he would definitely stand on the side of the unorthodox path. Naturally, Chen Ong would choose to wait with the righteous path and take the opportunity to kill the unorthodox path one by one to find out who had been replaced by the main god. The green-robed patriarch, the ancient demon corpse, the venerable poisonous dragon, Su Feinyang, the 3 phoenixes, there are so many unorthodox experts of the demonic path. Who exactly is destined to be replaced by the main god? Chen Ong smiled. This time, I want to turn over a new leaf. I want to be a righteous sword immortal who exterminates evil and upholds justice. I want to be a chivalrous, loyal, and righteous Taoist master. I want to be a carefree and unfettered senior expert. I want to be an accomplice of the Amay sect's 7 dwarves who bully the unorthodox path, and a nanny who helps the younger generation of the Amay sect to punish evil. It's a pity that I can't dominate the world with my demonic flames and fierce power. Chen Ong sighed. At this time, Chen Ong already understood the cause and effect of Li Ning's appearance here. It turned out that it was the end of the Ming dynasty. Zhang Xianzhong and Li Zicheng were causing trouble in the northern Shaanxi provinces. Li Ning, Zhou Chun, and Yang De were mingling in Jianghu with the lives of the 3 heroes of Qilu. This time, it was Zhou Chun's good friend, the great salt merchant Wang Changluo. Because of the trade of grain for salt permits, he wanted to protect the salt from Shaanxi to Yangzhou. Because of the rebellion of the refugees, he asked the 3 of them to protect him. At this time, the group was about to arrive in Nanjing. They stayed in Qixia Mountain and found a place to stay. Chen Ong also knew that when they arrived in Nanjing, they would meet Mao Tai, who was known as the 8-armed bear, and cut off 2 of his fingers. Because Zhou Chun was trapped by Mao Tai's words, he let him go. This caused Mao Tai, who would become the disciple of the Golden Arhat Fa Yuan decades later, to seek revenge on them. This started the beginning of the legend of the swordsman of Mount Shu, the battle between good and evil, and the beginning of the calamity of Tsiyun Temple. In this way, everything that was about to happen now was the beginning of the Amay sect's prosperity and the 3 battles between good and evil. At this time, Li Ning had already knocked on the door of Qixia Temple 3 times. "Is there no one in this temple?" Li Ning could not help but ask hesitantly. After a long time did not hear a response. At this time, the side door of Qixia Temple was pulled open with a squeak. A sloppy monk poked his head out and asked Li Ning, "Just now, was it you who knocked on the door?" To be continued. Chapter 400. A monk coming out of the Taoist temple was already out of Li Ning's expectations. He had heard from someone who was familiar with the area that there were 2 Taoists, one old and one young, living in the temple. He immediately became wary. On this trip, Wang Changluo had brought salt permits worth over 10,000 taels of silver. It was hard to prevent someone from replacing the Taoists here and plotting against them. Although Wang Changluo had come to Qixia Mountain in a roundabout way, taking the opportunity to tour Qixia's magnificent scenery, there were many strange people in the world. It was hard to guarantee that there would be people who could foresee the future and set up trap. Li Ning immediately cupped his hands and said, "Sorry to disturb you, master. We are passing merchants who heard about the beauty of Qixia maple leaves and came to the mountains to enjoy it. We missed the time to go back. We would like to stay in this temple for the night. I wonder if master can accommodate us." The sloppy monk looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. Li Ning saw that although his face was dirty and his fingernails were covered in dirt, his eyes were clear and bright. They did not have the murky blood vessels of secular beggars and wandering monks. Instead, they had the clarity and wisdom of a monk. This made him even more certain that he was not an ordinary person. As he thought this, he could not help but show it in his actions. He respected the sloppy monk even more. Monks, Taoists, children, women, and young girls who travel alone in Jianghu cannot be offended. There are many strange people among monks and Taoists, but women and children are weak. To be able to travel alone, they must have abilities that ordinary people cannot. Li Ning secretly observed the sloppy monk. He immediately felt that he was a strange person dressed like a monk or a Taoist, or even a sword immortal. "I am also residing in this 3 pure temple. I heard you knocking, so I came to open the door for you. I am not the owner of this place." The old monk opened the door for him and stumbled inside. He shook his head and said, "Clean up the wing and stay in this courtyard. Just don't barge into other courtyards. This old monk is a light sleeper at night and is easily woken up. Since master is not the owner of this Taoist temple, I should inform the owner." Li Ning apologized. The sloppy monk smiled and waved his hand. There are only 2 Taoist priests here. The old Taoist priest died half a year ago, leaving behind a young Taoist priest who is silly and foolish. He won't even open the door for you. You should deal with him yourself. When Lin Ning heard this, he told the manservant beside him to inform the people behind him of the situation. He then pushed the door open and walked in. It was not a small courtyard. No one had taken care of it for a long time. The corners were overgrown with weed. From afar, he could see the 2 courtyards at the back. It was dark and there were no lights. There was only a faint light in the last hall. It should be the main hall that worshipped the 3 pure ones. After tidying up the rooms on both sides, he heard that the group of people behind him had arrived. Everyone worked together to tidy up the courtyard. Soon, they lit up the lanterns, making the courtyard bustling with activity and a lot of noise. On this side, Lin Ning and the others had just moved in. On the other side, Chen Ong had roughly figured out his current situation. The old Taoist priest was not a master with mana. The few Taoist books left behind were also common good. Only a handwritten Taoist canon with Yang Talisman and Divine Talisman scripture was interesting. However, it was also the foundation for Taoist cultivators. It recorded a few crude spells. It should be known that Mount Shu was different from any world that Chen Ong had experienced. It was a world that had truly taken the path of transcendence and opened the door to transcendence. Not only were the laws and rules of this world stricter than what Chen Ong had ever seen, even the cultivation system was the most perfect. It could be said that if one followed the path of this world step by step, the possibility of achieving immortality and ascending to a higher dimension was greater than any other world. The mystic door of the righteous path had a perfect cultivation system. The Buddhist sect had a wide range of doors to enlighten people without discrimination. The unorthodox sects, demonic sects, and evil sects had supplementary exploration. In addition, the perfect karma and fate, the external system of karma, and the accumulation of reincarnation made this world exceptionally friendly to Taoists who intended to transcend. There was no greed and chaos of plundering resources. There was no food chain of Taoist cultivators who fought each other to the death. As long as one stood upright, maintained a pure mind, did not do anything greedy, foolish, evil, indiscriminate killing, bigotry, and did not have any delusion or evil thoughts, even if one walked the unorthodox path for a while, there would be a day when one cultivated to transcendence. Even if one pursued freedom and was not willing to ascend to heaven and be controlled by the Emperor of the Heaven Realm, as long as one avoided the 49 heavenly tribulations in the human world, one could be a free earth spirit and play freely. Under such circumstances, as long as one did not commit heinous crimes, one would have the opportunity to reincarnate. Although Chen Ong was not a reincarnated Taoist like the sloppy monk had imagined, he was still a mighty person who had crossed over a dozen planes of existence. His knowledge spanned across the mystic doors, Shinto path, and the mysteries of science. Although he did not understand the cultivation methods of this world, he could still make a rough deduction based on a few of the most basic talisman spells in the Taoist canon's miscellaneous magical Yang Talisman scripture. It turned out that the Taoist cultivators of this world were the same as the heroes and swordsmen of Jianghu. They practiced the innate qi in their bodies, and then visualized and stored it in their minds, subdued the distracting thoughts in their minds, and tempered their vital spirit and soul. They also took the path of refining essence into qi, refining qi into spirit, and refining spirit into void. However, the biggest difference between the early Taoist cultivators and the swordsmen of Jianghu was the mana in their bodies. Chen Ong put away his distracting thoughts, adjusted his vital qi, and mingled in his mind. His consciousness was detached from the world, and he forgot about himself and the world. He threw away the demons of the 5 senses, and the understanding and restriction of shape, sound, color, and quality. He grasped another sense of the human body outside of the 5 senses, consciousness. He sank into the observation of all things in heaven and earth, and grasped the essence of all things in the surroundings, chi. At this step, he had to restrain his mind and wake up from the chaotic feeling, and visualize talismans, images, and external spirits in his mind. The key was to have a spirit in his mind that was compatible with the nature of heaven and earth, and to be compatible with the vital chi in his body and the external chi. The representative of the spirit of heaven and earth was the talisman. The talisman was the spirit of heaven and earth, and the talisman was the seal of ghosts and deities. It drove the vital chi of heaven and earth, communicated with the spirit of heaven and earth, and restrained the ghosts and deities. It drew the vital chi in the body, and turned it into a talisman seed in the dantian. This was the beginning of transcendence energy. There were many different talismans in the Taoist canon of the Yang Talisman Divine Talisman scripture. There were the soul-driving talisman and spirit-summoning talisman to summon ghosts and deities, the transportation talisman and teleportation talisman to move objects, the fire talisman and water talisman to create fire and water, and the evil exorcism talisman to drive away demons. The devil victory talisman. They were all crude, simple, and common talismans that could only be used to cultivate some shallow transcendence energy. With this kind of transcendence energy, if one wanted to carry heavy objects and move objects through space, he had to have the transportation talisman. He had to cultivate a talisman with his own vital chi and store it in the dantian. It was the transportation of transcendence energy. When it was time to use it, he only needed to use the vital chi talisman to control this transcendence energy and move objects. After the transcendence energy was used up, he had to store it again. If one wanted to practice controlling fire and obtain transcendence energy, he had to store the transcendence energy of the fire talisman. According to this principle, if one wanted to cultivate any kind of transcendence energy, he had to store a talisman that could realize the transcendence energy. For the rogue cultivators, the transcendence energy they had was very shallow. Sometimes, to show their ability, they had to store dozens of talismans in the dantian at the same time. The transcendence energy was very heterogeneous. As for the big sects like Amei and Wutai, or the rogue immortals from overseas who had a complete inheritance, most of them had their own lineage of talisman inheritance. As long as several kinds of basic talismans were combined and matched at will, one could cultivate all kinds of inconceivably profound transcendence energy. They were all formed by the true talisman of the Tianfu or the Nine Heavens treasured talisman divine talisman formed by one's own unique vital chi. It could drive away ghosts and deities, control fire and water, control flying swords. It was omnipotent. Therefore, in the human world's folklores and legends, among the cultivators who cultivated transcendence energy, there were half-baked swindlers and sorceresses, and there were also swordsmen with profound transcendence energy. It was all because of the difference between the transcendence energy and talismans. The transcendence energy cultivated by the true talisman of the Tianfu was naturally much more powerful than the common talismans in the scripture of the Taoist canon of the Yang Talisman Divine Talisman. The scripture of the Yang Talisman of the Taoist canon of the Yang Talisman Divine Talisman was the only one in Chen Ang's possession. The Fire Talisman, Exorcism Talisman, Spirit Summoning Talisman, and other talismans recorded in it were at the top of the sky. If one cultivated some superficial and heterogeneous transcendence energy, with the true chi that Chen Ong had cultivated, he could at most lift a rock the size of a human head, and move some small objects. Or he could spit out a little flame that was as thick as a finger, and wet the clothes on his body. Chapter 401. With a little effort, Chen Ong stored several talisman seeds in his dantian. There were transportation talisman, teleportation talisman, fire talisman, water talisman, exorcism talisman, devil victory talisman, and so on. He circulated the vital chi in his body and combined them. Immediately, dozens of vital chi talismans were separated and hidden in his dantian. When his vital chi ran out, there were already several kinds of talisman seed. Each talisman had about 17 or 18 chi talismans hidden in his dantian. Looking at them with his spiritual awareness, they were shining with spiritual light and looked quite attractive. Chen Ong stretched out his hand and flicked out a chi talisman. Activating the chi of heaven and earth, he attached it to a small table next to him. With a thought, that small table floated up into the air shakily. It was only a small table that weighed dozens of kilograms, and it floated no more than half a foot high. When he tried to activate it again, it shook and could no longer rise. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the magical power that Chen Ong attached to its body dispersed, and the small tea set fell to the ground. Chen Ong was almost angered to the point of laughing. He knew that the scripture of the Taoist canon's Yang Talisman Divine Talisman scripture that was obtained by the old Taoist wouldn't be anything good, but his current display was still unbearable to watch. Chen Ong only had the most basic breathing and meditation. The vital qi he cultivated was also first-class pure and not inferior to any direct disciple of the mystic door. Under such circumstances, the talisman magic power that he cultivated could only achieve this effect. It was conceivable that the magic power cultivated by the Taoist canon of Yang Talisman and Divine Talisman scripture was mixed and crude. I originally wanted to hide my origin and try not to use methods that are not of this world, but now it seems that I can't. Chen Ong reluctantly dispersed the talisman seed in his dantian and restored his pure true qi. The method I created to enter the path will definitely carry my understanding and imprint. If it falls into the hands of an expert who is proficient in divination, they might be able to use it to spy on me. Also, I have never experienced the world of immortals. My way of thinking is deeply rooted in science. If I am not careful, I might arouse the vigilance of the main gods. Therefore, it is best to use the native method of immortals to derive and evolve it. In this way, I need something to use as a reference. Although he had never come into contact with the civilization of immortals, Chen Ong did have such a memory. When he and the professor worked together to project Chen Ong from another timeline, they summoned Cult Master Chen from the parallel world of immortals. With a wave of the Milky River, the outer god Chen Ong created in the apocalypse was turned into ashes. This Cult Master Chen was a supreme existence of the Tao fruit of the celestial Tao, and he was extremely cruel. Even a scroll of the celestial river he casually drew contained an extremely profound mystery of the celestial Tao, and it was more than enough to deduce the method of entering the Tao. Chen Ong entered a meditative state again. He closed his eyes and visualized the Milky River that Cult Master Chen had drawn that day. It was a vast and endless Milky River that seemed to contain the starry sky. At this moment, when the vital qi in his body surged, it also produced the sound of the surging waves of a great river. The pure vital qi absorbed the water vapor in the surrounding air, metamorphosing into drops of true water, and was absorbed into his dantian. In just a short while, the shallow non-attribute vital qi in Chen Ang's body had completely metamorphosed into the Kuei water vital qi. As his primordial spirit operated silently, Chen Ong used his supreme wisdom to derive the mysteries of the path contained in the Milky River. Due to the limitations of his body, such a large-scale calculation and deduction quickly exhausted his brain power. But at this moment, 9 talisman seeds jumped out of the Milky River in his sea of consciousness and fell into his dantian. They fused with the Kuei water vital qi and turned into the foundation of magical power. The magical power of the Milky River in his dantian was like a drop of transparent water. Each drop was condensed from the Kuei water vital qi absorbed by the 9 Milky River talismans. It was equivalent to a trace of magical power in the Taoist canon's Yang Talisman Divine Talisman scripture. The magical use of the Milky River magical power is even more than I expected. Cult Master Chen is indeed an existence comparable to the Apocalypse. In his timeline, he should have already reached the peak of the immortals. Just by comprehending the attack that he used to create the Milky River, I can already be comparable to the true teachings of the heavenly abode in this world. He wanted to try out the magical power of the Milky River that he derived, so he stretched out his hand and pointed at the 3 holy statues in the hall. These 3 holy statues were made of peach wood, and each of them weighed several hundred kilograms. They were made of century-old peach wood that had been worshipped by incense for 60 years. They contained psyche power and had long gained spirituality. Using magical power to move them was 100 times more difficult than using bluestone and iron. But with a point of Chen Ang's finger, they floated in the air and moved according to his will. Compared to the shallow magical power cultivated in the Taoist canon's Yang Talisman Divine Talisman scripture, it was more than 100 times more profound. If the same magical power was cultivated in the Taoist canon's Yang Talisman Divine Talisman scripture, it would only be able to lift a few dozen kilograms into the air. But with Chen Ang's newly derived magical power of the Milky River, not only did he not need to deliberately cultivate magical power with different functions, he could also lift a huge rock with ease and ease. The difference would only make those unorthodox sects who did not have any inheritance want to cry. Chen Ang continued to breathe in and out the water vapor to strengthen the magical power of the Milky River in his dantian. At the same time, he calculated how long the magical power floating in the 3 pristine holy statues could last. He thought that when he lifted the table, it could only last for 10 minutes. Although his magical power was more profound now, it could only last for a while. Unexpectedly, after more than 2 hours, the magical power supporting the 3 pristine holy statues had only been used up a little. Based on this calculation, when the next day came, the magical power would only be half used up. In the front yard, Li Ning and the others took more than 2 hours to tidy up a few rooms that had been abandoned for a long time. Thinking that they had not paid a visit to the owner of this place, they said to Wang Chongluo, "We came in a hurry and forgot to inform the owner of this place. It's very inappropriate. Now that everything is settled, I'll go and apologize to him." Wang Chongluo advised. "He's just a silly little Taoist. I think he doesn't understand these things. Why do you have to do this?" Li Ning only said, "Manners must not be lacking." Just as he was about to get up and go to the rear courtyard, Wang Chongluo hurriedly said, "Brother, I have a nephew, his name is Wang Ming. I'll let him go with you and be your footman, so that you won't have anyone to help you." Wang Chongluo also had his own plans. His nephew heard that he had asked for the protection of the 3 heroes of Qi and Lu and had just come to seek shelter today. He wanted to use this opportunity to introduce him to Li Ning, with the intention of letting his nephew become Li Ning's disciple. If he could use this opportunity to have some master-disciple relationship, he would not have to pay a few favors. Li Ning immediately understood Wang Chongluo's intention. After a moment of silence, he asked Wang Chongluo to bring his nephew to meet the owner of the Taoist temple. Wang Ming looked to be a 16 or 17-year-old youth, dressed in embroidered clothes with a long knife made of rhinoceros skin hanging on his waist. His brows were filled with excitement, but his personality was a little rash. He and Li Ning walked to the front door of the 2 courtyards. Without waiting for Li Ning to knock, he pushed the door open. "Aya!" Wang Ming rushed into the backyard, but after a few steps, he was so scared that he ran back. He pointed to the backyard and shouted, "There's a snake in this courtyard, Uncle Li. Someone released a snake to harm us." To be continued. Chapter 402. Li Ningyi didn't have the time to blame him for being rash. He stepped into the rear courtyard and saw a large red-scaled snake entrenched in the middle of the courtyard. It opened its mouth and spat out moonlight. When it saw him enter, it raised its body vigilantly and hissed incessantly. The large snake's triangular head was as thick as a normal person's thigh. Its beautiful scales reflected a stream of light under the moonlight. One didn't need to ask to know that this was an extremely poisonous snake of the highest quality. If someone who practiced poison in Jianghu saw it, they would definitely think of it as a treasure. However, to Li Ning, this kind of poison was exceptionally dangerous. Although he was highly skilled in martial arts, this kind of strange poison usually had some special characteristics. Even he would fall into its trap if he wasn't careful. Li Ning took out a plum blossom dart from his sleeve. At the same time, he had 7 or 8 hidden weapons ready. He had the nickname of the Tongbi Divine Ape because his sword skills were high and he could use all kinds of hidden weapons. He could attack and receive attack. He carefully hid his body and shot out 7 or 8 hidden weapons. Even if the large snake was 2 times larger, it would still be killed. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The sloppy monk ran out from the side room and blocked in front of the large snake. He pretended to pat the large snake twice, and the red-scaled snake retracted its body and coiled up. This large snake was raised by the little Taoist since it was young. If you hit it, I'm afraid you'll be beaten out, the sloppy monk explained. Before Li Ning could apologize, he heard the kid next to him shout, "Wow! So it's a snake raised by the people in this Taoist temple. Raising such a large snake in the courtyard, are they purposely trying to harm us? In my opinion, even if they aren't good people either. They raise poisonous creatures and we live in the front courtyard. If a poisonous snake crawls over at night and harms us, would you pay with your lives?" Wang Ming pulled out the rhinoceros-skinned long knife from his waist and walked towards the red-scaled snake, saying, "How can I turn a blind eye to such a vicious creature? Today, I will enforce justice on behalf of the heavens and behead it." The sloppy monk wanted to stop him, saying, "Without the little Taoist's orders, it will never leave this courtyard and will not harm you. I told you not to disturb us. You were frightened, how can you blame it on it? What's the point of keeping such a harmful thing?" Wang Ming didn't listen to him, and had already walked to the side of the red-scaled snake. The snake was startled and stood up straight, agitated by the saber chi in Wang Ming's hand. Without waiting for Li Ning to pull him back, it spat out a poisonous mist about 3 feet high. The grass and trees that came into contact with it quickly withered and turned yellow. A fishy smell assaulted Wang Ming's nostrils. He immediately felt dizzy and fell to the ground. Although Li Ning was annoyed at his rashness, he was still a nephew entrusted to him by his friend. He hurriedly went over to support him, but he saw that his eyes had already turned white and he was breathing weakly. It was obvious that he had been deeply poisoned and could not be easily detoxified using ordinary method. Li Ning saw that there were no wounds on his body, so he used his inner force to press on his stomach and incessantly urged on it. At this time, Wang Ming finally reacted. He opened his mouth and spat out a large pile of filth, but his condition of being poisoned didn't improve at all. His breathing had already become rapid. The sloppy monk came to his side and squatted down. He stretched out his hand and pressed on the vein on the side of Wang Ming's neck, rubbing it a few times to let him catch his breath. He said to Li Ning, "That red-scaled snake is a red-scaled snake. When it was only 2 or 3 inches long, it was caught by the silly little Taoist here. He kept it by his side and fed it some rice and insects every day. After a long time, it gradually grew. Because it often stayed by people's side, it became somewhat intelligent. When it grew to 5 feet long, its body gradually shed its skin and became scarlet red. However, its temperament became increasingly gentle and intelligent. It got rid of the poisonous aura of a poisonous snake. Apart from cultivating a mouthful of scarlet poisonous mist to protect itself, it had no other poison. Today, it was frightened by someone and sprayed it out to protect itself, so this nephew of yours didn't immediately die when he smelled the poisonous mist. Great Master, do you have a way to save him?" Li Ning couldn't care less about being astonished by such a strange occurrence and hurriedly cupped his fists and asked. The sloppy monk shook his head and said, Whoever tied the bell must untie it. Although this poison isn't strong, it has been refined by the red-scaled snake for many years, so how could it be ordinary? I have a way to keep him alive, but the residual poison has penetrated deep into his bones, so I can't do anything about it. From now on, the poison will attack at 2 in the afternoon every day, and his whole body will feel like it's on fire and he will be in unbearable pain. Furthermore, as the 4 seasons change and spring and autumn change, the poison will appear on his face in the form of a rash. Li Ning frowned and said, "We men don't care about our looks, but how can the poison not harm the body? Besides, he has to suffer 2 tortures every day. It really is worse than death." Great Master said that whoever tied the bell must untie it. I wonder where this person can untie it is? The sloppy monk pointed towards the great hall in the backyard and massaged Wang Ming's blood flow. After alleviating the poison, he left. Chen Ong was meditating in the great hall when he suddenly sensed something crawling under him. He stretched out his hand and allowed it to climb up his body. The red-scaled snake intimately rubbed against his cheek, as if sensing the true water qi slowly flowing through his body. The snake's ice-cold body stuck close to his chest, dantian, and other important acupuncture points, comfortably absorbing the true qi that Chen Ong had lost. After casually withdrawing the transcendence energy attached to the 3 Pure Ones' holy statue, Chen Ong used the remaining transcendence energy on his right hand and slowly combed through the snake's entire body along its head. The transcendence energy of the heavenly river washed over the red-scaled snake's body. Due to the poison it had just spat out earlier, the snake's somewhat dispirited spirit quickly recovered. It playfully chased after Chen Ang's fingers. Its body circled between the 5 fingers, sticking closely to the strands of transcendence energy that had seeped into its body. Chen Ong had quite a bit of affection for this little pet that he had raised when his primordial spirit was returning. He immediately sacrificed a few strands of transcendence energy and used the method of training mounts and pets in this world to forge a foundation for the snake. At this moment, he suddenly heard someone calling out from outside the courtyard, "Little Taoist, I am a passing tourist. I live in the front yard of the Taoist temple, and I have something to ask of you. Are you in your room?" Chen Ong already knew the cause and effect with just a thought. He immediately answered, "Since you are a guest from afar, push open the door and come in." Li Ning was slightly taken aback. He helped Wang Ming push open the door and entered. Seeing the red-scaled snake coiled on Chen Ang's knee, his eyelids twitched involuntarily. He forcefully suppressed his thoughts and cupped his fists towards Chen Ong, saying, "I am Li Ning, also known as the Tongbi Divine Ape. Together with my 2 brothers, they are collectively known as the 3 Heroes of Qilu. Because I was accompanying a friend on an excursion to Qixia Mountain, I missed the time to leave the mountain, so I'm staying in your esteemed temple for the night. But this nephew of mine was reckless. He trespassed into the backyard without the owner's permission and was accidentally injured by the red-scaled snake that I reared. Now his injuries are critical, so I begged the owner of this place to save him." The 3 Heroes of Qilu. Chen Ong frowned. Li Ning saw that Chen Ang's eyes were clear and bright, unlike what the sloppy monk had described him to be, a foolish little Taoist. He suddenly became suspicious. Following the rules of Jianghu, he announced his name. Although this move was somewhat arrogant, the 3 Heroes of Qilu had quite a bit of prestige in Jianghu, so he wanted to test Chen Ong. But to Li Ning's disappointment, Chen Ong did not have any other reaction. He calmly shook his head. "I don't know you." Chen Ong went forward to check on Wang Ming's injuries and nodded, saying, "As expected, it was Macho who injured him. Before the poison could accumulate in his heart and lungs, it was dispersed by someone using qi, so his life wasn't in danger. But it has also flowed into his limbs and bones, making it even more troublesome to get rid of it. Looks like you have offended that sloppy monk." Hearing this, Li Ning was stunned. He did not know what to say, so he could only shake his head and smile bitterly. He asked doubtfully, "Macho? Is it this giant snake? Why is it called Macho?" Chapter 403. Originally, the fire poison that young Wang Ming had been afflicted with could be dispelled by Chen Ang's spiritual power. However, since they were in the Shushan world, he inevitably had to play some tricks. At the same time, he wanted to teach this fool, who dared to take advantage of his master's absence to bully his pet, a lesson. Therefore, Chen Ong merely pressed his palm against Wang Ming's body and forced him to wake up slowly with the water vapor of his jinqi. Without even looking at the fool, he said to Lin Ning, "Macho's poison isn't strong, but it's extremely annoying. It has a nice name called love poison, which means that this poison is like a lover, lingering to the bone, breaking the heart of love. I don't have a good way to detoxify him. At most, I can save him from being burned by fire twice in the morning and in the evening. But I don't have meridian to release the poison twice, so it will inevitably accumulate in his heart." He put on a troubled look inside. Everything else is okay, and he can move like a normal person. But in the future, he can't fall in love. Once he does it, he will have a rash on his head, and he will suffer the pain of being burned by fire. "There is such a problem," Lin Ning said in shock. Wang Ming, who was next to him, suddenly woke up. His mind was still not clear, and he asked, "What is Yangju?" Lin Ning stopped him with a look. He saw that Chen Ang's face was a little fake, and he knew that Chen Ong was going to punish the kid next to him. But after all, he was asked by his friend, so he had to do it. His father is the only heir of the 9th branch, and he is the only child in the whole family. If he can't fall in love, it will be very unfilial. In life, filial piety comes first. Young Taoist, please be merciful and let him live on. Chen Ong thought for a while, then said, "Fine. I will teach you a way. Macho has been practicing with me since I was a child. As she grew older, she became more and more experienced, so she shed her scales and put on a bright red coat. She didn't expect that this would attract the attention of her natural enemy. In Qixia Mountain, there is a celestial swordsman who lives in seclusion. He raises a 100-year-old white crane, which likes to eat poisonous things. Every month, he comes to my yard to fight with Macho. I can't stand it." That mutated white crane had been exposed to the poisonous fog of the Macho fire poison many times. Because it was connected to the spirit qi and had eaten the spiritual herbs in the mountains, it gradually developed a mouthful of spirit crane saliva. It was the best at restraining all poisons and was also the only nemesis of the Macho fire poison fog. "I'm sure that tomorrow will be the day when the crane and Macho fight. The two of you can hide on the side and help Macho defeat the crane, capture it, and collect the spirit saliva." After that, he didn't care what Li Ning was thinking. He sat cross-legged in front of the 3 pristine statues and closed his eyes to meditate. The red serpent Macho also followed him and swallowed the natural qi that Chen Ong had absorbed. Li Ning had no choice but to drag Wang Ming out of the hall. Chen Ong had just started to practice qi and use his mana. He was not proficient. Although he was born with wisdom and could see the great Tao as if he had divine help, he still practiced hard and was obsessed with exploring the rules and great Tao of this world. He studied mana and vital qi. After one night, the originally shallow mana became richer. Just one night's effort was better than 10 years of polishing vital qi. The Milky Way mana was formed by 9 kinds of talisman seeds collected from the Gui water vital qi. The records of the Grand Historian once said, "Gui's words are Kue," saying that everything can be calculated and measured, so it is called Gui. It means that everything in the universe can be measured and speculated, so it is called Gui. The Gui water vital qi that Chen Ong practiced was the true meaning of measuring and studying everything, so that he could rule the world with Tao. Therefore, the Milky Way mana belonged to the water element of the 5 element. In fact, it was best at measuring and analyzing the great Tao. It was close to the nature of everything. Under the operation of mana, there was nothing in the world that couldn't be analyzed. On the surface, it seemed to be one of the 5 elements, but in fact, it followed the great Tao of understanding and changing the world. It was very close to the scientific worldview that Chen Ong lived for. The spirit of heaven and earth was the talisman, and the spirits of ghosts and deities were the talisman. As the foundation of the Milky Way mana, the 9 talisman seeds could also be called the 9 talismans of the Milky Way. When combined with each other, they could evolve and edit all the spells in the world. Among all the spells, it was the best kind. It could be compared to the true teachings of the Tianfu and the orthodoxy of the emperor. At this moment, Chen Eng's hands were empty. Other than the spiritual beast Macho, he really didn't have any belongings. He just needed an instrument to protect himself. Among the possessions that the old Taoist left behind in the Xixia temple, other than a 400-year-old sandalwood tree in the backyard that secretly contained spiritual qi, there were only 3 statues of the 3 pristine holy statues made of old peach wood that were worshipped day and night, and an everlasting lamp. Old sandalwood was a good material to make a magical instrument. It was refined with the Milky Way mana. Although it was innately limited and unfavorable for killing, it had its own Tao nature and its fragrance was clean. It could be used to make a magical instrument that could subdue inner demons, ward off evil spirits, and purify the heart. It was a magical instrument that had a miraculous effect on those who were possessed by the devil. However, for a person like Chen Ong, whose primordial spirit was comparable to the extraterrestrial demon king, and whose Tao nature or demonic nature was immortal, this kind of magical instrument was a little useless. If there were any extraterrestrial demons that sneaked into Chen Eng's real spirit, the one that would be devoured would definitely not be Chen Ong. There was no need to worry about a small problem like being possessed by the devil. If he used the 3 pristine holy statues of the 3 pristine holy statues to make a magical instrument, it would be too embarrassing. If it really attracted the attention of the 3 mighty beings from the upper realm, it would not be worth it. After thinking about it, only the everlasting lamp that was worshipped on the 3 pristine holy statues was the most suitable. Although it was lit with an ordinary fire, it was estimated that the ancestors of the Xixia temple had received guidance from an expert. A bright lamp could not be extinguished for 300 years. They also gathered the old sandalwood oil in the backyard to make the lamp oil. After 300 years, the flame of the lamp had already contained spiritual qi. The burning lamp oil emitted a gentle fragrance, which was the best for purifying the heart and nourishing the mind. Although its essence was still an ordinary fire, and could not be compared to the spiritual flames that were born from vitality, it was still considered a good material for making magical instruments. In the world of Shu Mountain, the magical instruments refined by the individual immortal experts only used magical power to wash day and night, so that the spirituality of the material and the primordial spirit could be combined. Then, the spirituality of the magical instrument would be cultivated with the qi of spiritual medicine and strengthen its essence. Therefore, the characteristics of the magical instrument are special. According to the nature of the material, it is very easy to be restrained, and the connection between it and the owner is not strong. The advantage is that other than some magical instruments that are related to proving Tao and ascension, or treasures that are related to the cultivation of life, other magical instruments can be found in some blessed land with abundant spiritual qi and suitable environment. Using the power of heaven and earth to nourish the magical instrument, it is convenient and convenient. In hundreds or thousands of years, it can be made into a batch of powerful magical instruments, and it will not hinder the cultivation. Although this method was convenient and simple, it was not suitable for the current Chen Ong. On one hand, he did not want to form karma with the old monsters who ascended or were about to ascend from Shu Mountain. If he messed up the clear karma net of the heavenly path, would it not be making a wedding dress for the main god? It was convenient for it to infiltrate this world, but it would expose itself. Therefore, in this world, there was an order of inheritance. The magical instruments that the predecessors planned to leave for the descendants, unless it was destined to be with him. Chen-ong was not prepared to intervene. Ancestor Dharma, immortal Chunyang, immortal Bai Yang, immortal Guang Qingzi, Golden Mother Tianyi, immortal Long Brow. These old monsters are all cunning. They have already ascended to the upper realm, but they are still playing chess in the lower realm. The magical instrument remains that they left behind. Taking it is like owing karma and falling into their trap. Chen-ong snorted disdainfully. My status is high, and I have cultivated for a long time, not inferior to these people. I admit that I am a junior just to think about those few pieces of scrap metal. I can't do such a shameful thing. Chen-ong sneered and said, after Dharma achieved Tao, he gave up the Nanmingli fire sword, the ultimate treasure of refining demons, and threw it away like a shoe, just because it became an obstacle to seeking Tao. But some people's eyes are fixed on the broken shoes left by others, and they forget about the things that they have been pursuing diligently. Those people in a may can be said to be good at adding things to things. As the saying goes, borrow fake cultivation, throw it away after using it. It's not like throwing a watermelon when seeing sesame. But some people seem to have deep greed in their bones. Not to mention magical instruments or heavenly books, they even want to take away the slightly useful flowers and plants. They don't think about whether they can bear the karma calculation in it. They are really short-sighted. Chen-ong keenly felt that the karma and luck alarm that he had set in the original work and left for the future generation of the treasure was slightly touched. He smiled and said, there is no doubt that the samsara travelers are such people, but without you, how can I find the spy left by the Lord God? With a casual point, the magic power of the Milky Way was divided into 9 kinds of talisman of the Milky Way and the Gui water genuine Qi, which were thrown into the flame of the eternal lamp on the table. The Gui water genuine Qi nourished the small flame of the lamp, and the 9 talisman of the Milky Way formed the embryonic form of a prohibition in the flame of the lamp. The Gui water genuine Qi and the true meaning of the 9 talisman of the Milky Way merged into one, and the flame of the eternal lamp immediately emitted a faint light, separated from the wick, and burned even more vigorously. Chen-eng's reaction was extremely fast, and he immediately activated the magic power of the Milky Way. He spat out a roll of Milky Way, and suddenly opened his mouth to suck in. The flame of the eternal lamp in the air was swallowed by him into his stomach, and sank into his dantian, where it was nourished by the magic power of the Milky Way. To be continued. Chapter 404. Although there were some changes in karma in this world, Chen-ong was a patient hunter. He knew that this was just a slight test from the main god, so he did not pay much attention to it. At least, he would wait until the prey had nowhere to retreat and had no hope of escaping with its tail cut off. Only then would he strike with the speed of lightning and end its life. He had just started to practice magic treasures, and it was the time when he was full of inspiration. Before dawn, he walked to a sky-opening cliff not far from Shixia Temple and waited for the sun to rise to collect the first purple gas. When the red sun rose and the clouds parted, he would absorb the purple gas from the east to nourish the Milky Way Dharma power in his dantian, so that the Dharma power would have a trace of purple gas, which could nourish the primordial spirit. The time to collect the purple gas was only the moment when the sun rose. In the remaining time, Chen-ong spat out the eternal lamp flame and used the Milky Way Dharma power to collect the true fire of the sun from the sunlight and integrate it into the magic treasure. The true fire of the sun was one of the 7 true fires in the universe. It was also called the fire of the sky. When it was refined into the common fire from wood, it would increase its power. The eternal lamp flame was just a common fire, so it was not good. Chen-ong wanted to collect the true fire of the sun to improve its origin. If he could collect the true fire of the sun from the sky, the poison fire of the ancient earth lung under the crust, and the eternal lamp flame, he would be able to cultivate the true fire of samadhi. He would have the power to burn mountains and boil seas, and cultivate demons to achieve Tao. It would not be weaker than any magic treasure. Of course, it was still too early to talk about this kind of hard work that could easily take hundreds of years. The Milky Way Dharma power engulfed the whole mountain like smoke and fog. Chen Ong soon felt the agitation of the spirituality in the eternal lamp flame and knew that it was time. If he continued to collect it, it would hurt the spirituality of the flame, so he stored it in his dantian to nourish it. Beside the stream, the red serpent Macho was also absorbing the essence of the sun. When the warm morning light disappeared, the sun became more and more violent, and it was not suitable for a snake of Yin attribute like Macho to degenerate its primordial qi. Chen Ong took Macho down the mountain and walked towards Shi Xia Temple. Before he entered the door, he saw a young man in a sorry state rushing out of the temple. The young man pointed at his nose and scolded, "You evil Taoist! You released a snake to harm others and caused me to be poisoned. You will pay with your life." Chen Ong saw that his face was covered in rashes, and he did not look human at all. His whole body was covered in dust and mud. It was obvious that he had tasted the pain of being burned by the meridian 2-hour fire yesterday. Thinking about it this way, it was only natural for him to be so resentful. However, Chen Ong was not his father, so why should he sympathize with his suffering? Seeing him pointing at his nose with a fierce look on his face, he immediately sneered. While he was still making a fuss, he absorbed his aura. He casually broke off a branch from the bushes beside him and used his transcendence energy to slap his aura in. Wang Ming, who was shouting, did not know when to stop. Seeing that Chen Ong did not respond, he actually wanted to take 2 steps forward and get in front of Chen Ang's face. His uncle, Wang Chongluo, looked on coldly from the side. He was probably looking for someone to hold Li Ning back so that he could not help Chen Ong. Chen Ong wasn't willing to let Wang Ming's spittle splash on him, so he casually pinched one end of the branch. Wang Ming suddenly cried out in pain, clutching his ankle as he fell to the ground. "Oh, sorry, I'm looking in the wrong direction." Chen Ong turned the branch around and casually found a piece of cloth, wrapping it twice around the other end. Wang Ming's hands and feet seemed to be tied up, his mouth gagged, and he could only make muffled sounds. The onlookers were originally prepared to teach this little Taoist a lesson for the sake of Master Wang Chongluo, but now that they saw this scene, how would they dare to do so? They could only watch as Chen Ong swaggered away, calmly escaping. Only after he left did someone mumble to himself, stammering, "Demon? Demon Dao." An old man whom Wang Chongluo trusted quite a bit, trembled as he placed his luggage at his feet. Without even taking back his wages, he said to Wang Chongluo, "Master, I don't dare to take this job anymore. Please be merciful, Master, and let me go." Without waiting for a reply, he stumbled out of the mountain. Wang Chongluo forced himself to cheer up, and asked someone to send him his wages and luggage. He then put on a good show in front of everyone, comforting them with kind words and putting on a show. Finally, he managed to calm the anxious and uneasy hearts of the people. At this time, Wang Ming had already broken free from the impeachment of Mo Xing's magic. He looked in the direction in which Chen Ong had left in fear and shouted to his uncle, "The branch, that branch." He wanted to snatch it back, but his uncle didn't dare to let him go. He pulled on his clothes and said, "Good boy, do you want to be defeated by the devil again? We can't wait to avoid such a demon, and you still want to send yourself to our doorstep? If we don't get that branch back, even if we run 1,000 miles away, we won't be able to escape his impeachment." Wang Ming shouted. It wasn't that they were knowledgeable, but that this spell was really famous. From the witchcraft of the royal family to the common people beating up villains, this spell could be seen everywhere. It could be said to be the most well-known and widespread spell since ancient times. It was also the representative spell of the masters, Taoists, and even the gods and sorcerers. Not only did it have a long history in the Central Plains, but it could also be seen in Western magic and African voodoo art. It was really the most widely varied spell in the world. Wang Ming's uncle scolded. He can capture your soul with just a casual pat. If you go now, who knows what other evil spells he has. You'd better follow me and invite your two uncle masters Zhou and Yang, and ask for a good karma from that person and dispel that spell. That young Wang Ming was just angry for a moment. Now that he had come back to his senses, he was also scared out of his wits, so he followed his uncle's orders. Not long after, Li Ning helplessly brought Wang Ming to knock on the door of the wing room where Chen Ong lived. At this time, the rash on Wang Ming's face had gotten better and he could see people, but this also meant that the next pain of being burned by fire was coming. He looked around and suddenly cried out in surprise, "Uncle Li, look at the sky!" Li Ning raised his head to look at the sky, and sure enough, he saw a white crane with coir feathers circling in the sky. The crane's cry was clear and melodious, and it descended to the back of the main hall. Chen Ong stood behind the main hall. The scarlet serpent was coiled on the stone eaves of the well, hissing towards the sky. On the eaves stood a huge red-crowned crane. Its head was bright red, and its whole body was snow-white. There was not a single strand of mixed hair on its body. It had golden eyes and an iron beak, and its two claws were like copper hooks. It was at least a foot tall, and it was picking and combing its feathers. In just a short while, Li Ning had already arrived with Wang Ming. Seeing the white crane on the eaves, Wang Ming was overjoyed. He raised his hand and took out the sleeve dart that Li Ning had given him to protect himself, and shot it towards the white crane. Li Ning couldn't stop it in time, and the swift sleeve dart was caught by the white crane with its beak. But this action had already angered the feathered crane. It swooped down from the sky, and its two copper hook-like claws slashed towards Li Ning's head. If the claws landed, it would be a small matter for his skin to split open. Chapter 405. This cowhide crane was reared by the mutants. It was very human-like and well-educated. That was why, even though Chen Ong was only a mortal before his arrival, and even lacked spiritual intelligence, he was not hurt by this strange spiritual bird. It was just that it had a natural conflict with the red serpent Macho. Every day they fought for fun, and the little Taoist in the past was bullied. Chen Ong had used the spirit crane's saliva to teach Li Ning a lesson because he wanted to punish this feathered beast on behalf of his past self. Unexpectedly, the young man brought by Li Ning was not even as well educated as a feathered animal. He was born in a wealthy family and his parents were usually arrogant. When he was outside, he had Wang Chongluo, his uncle who was a salt merchant, to back him up. Even the three elites of Qilu and Qilu had to look up to him. This made him arrogant out of nowhere. After being threatened by Chen Ong, not only did he not get rid of his strange illness, he was scared silly. Seeing the two birds as tall as a human, with large eyes and iron beaks and copper claws that could split mountains and split rocks, it was obvious that they were not to be trifled with. The moment they went up, they shot arrows from their sleeves. Li Ning, who was carrying him, was scared out of his wits. How could Li Ning not know that this stupid young man did not know the severity of the situation? In Jianghu, there were strange beasts reared by the mutants. Their own abilities were equivalent to that of a peerless master swordsman. Each of them also had some innate magical powers. The worst part was that they had strong backers. If you bullied the birds they reared, sooner or later, the backer would come looking for you. Those lonely masters always treated the strange beasts and spiritual birds that accompanied them as their eyes. Most of them had strange tempers, and if they met some strange and fierce ones, they might lose their lives. Luckily, the birds were well educated and did not have any intention of killing them. Li Ning was known as a divine ape, but when a divine ape really came, it would not be able to win against the crane that had been trained by the sword celestial. Its iron beak was like two precious swords that could be opened and closed at will. It flew up and down, making it look like a male ape. Lin Ning was also a famous swordsman in Jianghu. Encountering such a powerful, godly swordsman, even though he suffered a lot and was in a sorry state, when the crane suddenly got angry, it used its feet and beak at the same time, clawing and pecking, he was completely defeated. His face was covered in peach blossoms and his clothes were ragged. If the spirit bird hadn't shown mercy, his situation would have been 10 times more miserable. Chen Ong shook his head as he watched from the side. Rather than counting on these people to help him vent his anger, he might as well do it himself. Although it was a little embarrassing to bully a beast, it was better than them making a fool of themselves here. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Chen Ong realized that in this world, the difference between immortals and mortals was like the difference between heaven and earth. Li Ning's swordsmanship was skillful, and his concealed weapon skill was divine. In Chen Ang's eyes, his martial arts were not inferior to his subordinates, Murong Bo, Xiao Yuanshan, Duan Yanqing, and the others. But when faced with the mount of a sword immortal from a different sect, he could only block left and right, but still couldn't win. That spirit bird's beak was like an iron hook, and it had its own way of doing things. It didn't even use its own divine ability, yet it was able to force Li Ning to the point where he couldn't protect himself. How could the difference between the two be explained in just a few sentences? In short, it was just the difference between immortals and mortals. Thinking up to this point, his original intention to test Chu Yang had already faded by 80%. But when he saw that Spirit Crane's naughty and mischievous intentions were aroused, it started pecking that youngster's buttocks, and it almost pecked the little worm between his legs a few times, making him cry out in fear. Li Ning also had a bitter expression on his face, and didn't dare to step forward. Suddenly, an evil fire started burning in his heart. Thinking of the few naughty and mischievous things that this vicious big bird had done in the past, he chuckled and flew out from the window. Unexpectedly, when that bird saw him, it actually abandoned its plaything beside it and started pecking at him. Its temperament was very vile. How could Chen Ong still be afraid of it now? With a clear shout, he waved his hand, and a ray of mana froze all the bones in its body. In the secular world, this technique was known as the body-fixing technique, and it was somewhat similar to the upper-level acupoint sealing technique in Jianghu. At this moment, this white crane could only move its eyeballs. Its temperament was intelligent, and it knew that it was meat on someone else's chopping block. Its eyes showed a lot of obedience, which was the opposite of its previous bad behavior, and it acted like a docile and pure bird. How could Chen Ong let it go so easily? He sneered a few times, and first went to help Li Ning out of his predicament. He was prepared to slowly deal with it later. If he didn't pull out 100 tricks from it, he would be in vain as the avatar of the heavenly demon head Apocalypse. He pried open its long beak, and a few drops of pure white crane saliva with a strange fragrance dripped out. Chen Ong pulled out its tongue, and filled 4 small porcelain bottles with the saliva. He handed 1/2 full bottle to Li Ning and said, "This beast's spiritual saliva is very mature. Give it 1 drop every day at noon for 3 consecutive days, and the poison will be cured. The remaining crane saliva is the panacea for detoxification. There aren't many common poisons that it can't cure. If a famous doctor uses it as a medicine guide and blends it with precious medicinal herbs, it can be refined into a precious pill that can purify one's inner force and increase one's cultivation. If taken at a young age, it can help strengthen one's foundation, and your hard work will not be in vain." Li Ning took the crane's saliva, but he didn't have any dissatisfaction in his heart. Even if there was, it would mostly be directed at this stupid young man beside him. He felt exhausted all over, and just wanted to find Wang Chongluo to unload the burden on his body. He didn't dare to be this stupid uncle anymore. As for the idea of taking him as a disciple because he was an old friend, he wanted to get as far away from him as possible. He only treated him as a pile of dog shit, and he would never dare to let him touch him again. Li Ning apologized to Chen Ong, and was about to go back to tidy up his exhausted body and mind, but when he saw Wang Ming's shifty eyes, he knew that he was going to cause trouble again. Just as the thought of tying him up rose in his mind, Wang Ming quickly knelt at Chen Eng's feet and shouted, "I, Wang Ming, am willing to become the disciple of an immortal and learn spells. I hope that immortal Chen Quan will accept me." When he said that, Li Ning and Chen Ong, who were beside him, had the same thought. This kid is really the best of the best. He went from arrogant to respectful, and changed his attitude so quickly. Does he really think that all immortals are goldfish with a memory of only 6 seconds? Even if he's begging someone, his tone is still saying that I'm giving you face by worshipping you. Hurry up and agree. Li Ning suddenly felt his right hand itch, and he just wanted to hit him. At this time, the young man suddenly remembered that Li Ning was still here, so he turned his head and said with a serious expression, "Uncle Li, my uncle wants me to worship you as my master, but I admire the path of immortals and don't want to go to the mortal world anymore. Please don't make things difficult for me." Li Ning was so angry that he almost laughed. He waved his hand and wanted to leave, but he was a kind person after all. He thought that he still had the elixir that the young man wanted, and if he left, he would inevitably come looking for him again to disgust him. So he forced himself to control himself and watched coldly from the side. The more the young man spoke, the more determined he became. He actually continued, "My parents are old, and I hope that Uncle Li can tell my uncle that I'm going to seek Tao with an immortal and no longer care about worldly affairs. I also hope that he can help me take care of my parents. I, Wang Ming, will definitely repay you in the future." He glanced at Chen Ong and said directly, "My heart to seek Tao is as firm as iron and stone. Even my parents and relatives can't hold me back." When he finished, he turned his head back and said loudly, "I've made up my mind, Uncle Li, don't try to persuade me any more." Chen Ong, who was at the side, pinched off a feather from the spirit crane. Looking at the young man's flapping little wings and pure eyes, he thought to himself, "Is he showing his determination to me?" Li Ning only wanted to laugh. He only felt that there were countless complaints in his heart. Although he didn't know what they meant, the feeling was the same. If it was a normal young man, he could teach him a lesson or two for the sake of his friend. But facing this stupid young man, he really didn't have the strength to complain. There were countless words rolling in his heart. "Mo, you said, you want us to take care of your own parents? How shameless! There are no unfilial immortals in the world. What's wrong with your brain that you think people will accept you? You don't even care about your parents. What kind of revenge do we want from you? You said that your father is the only son of the 9 branches. Have you eaten up filial piety?" In the end, thousands of words were condensed into 2 words, hee. He learned the meaning of hee without a teacher. Many thoughts flashed through Chen Eng's mind in an instant. If I met such a talented person in other worlds, I would definitely give him an unparalleled opportunity, so that he would understand the principle of the fragrance of plum blossoms comes from the bitter cold, and there is no such thing as a free lunch falling from the sky. I have 1,200 copies of extreme biochemical experiment plans in my pocket. Each of them is brilliant and the quantity is extraordinary. I guarantee that I'll make him die an unprecedented death. However, I'm playing the role of a righteous cultivator in this world. It's not appropriate for me to play such games. Why don't I give you a set meal of the flying yiksha, drought demon, ghost, and red-eyed zombie of the Panga clan? That will be the fulfillment of our fate. Chapter 406. If they were in another world, Chen Ong would have 100 ways to toy with this brat to death, but now he was not a local, and he was wearing the shell of a righteous senior, so he could not be so obvious. Of course, he was not prepared to let this brat go. If he rejected him flatly, wouldn't it be letting him off easy? He had to take him in as his subordinate so he could slowly deal with him. Of course, this kind of idiot would go out to make a living and get involved in the entanglement of karma. 9 out of 10 of them would be sent home lying down. But again, Chun-Ong was not his father, so how could he teach him how to be a person? It was better to let him experience it himself in the future. Cough, cough. Chun-Ong cleared his throat. Good, you have such a heart of Tao, so you can be considered a seed of Tao cultivation. It's just that techniques are not easily passed on. Even if your foundation is excellent, and a beam of spiritual light spurts out from the top of your head, and you are a genius in Tao cultivation, you still can't avoid trials and tribulations. Next to him, Lin Ning did his best to restrain himself. He could naturally see that Chun-Ong was purely joking, but considering Wang Ming's eccentric personality and the fact that he would almost certainly treat his good intentions as malicious intent, he naturally wouldn't do something that would be strenuous and unrewarding. And Wang Ming was naturally overjoyed, saying, "Master, I am not afraid of this kind of test." "Don't call me master." Chun-Ong stopped him. "You are such a fine jade, and you will definitely have greater opportunities in the future. How can I ruin your future? I appreciate your aptitude, and I will lend you a hand. Please don't take me as your master." Wang Ming was originally a little unwilling to take him as his master. He thought, actually, this person may not have any skills. My aptitude is more than 100 times higher than his, so of course it would be easy to beat him. At least he has some self-awareness. If I really take him as my master, and my abilities surpass him by 100 times in the future, wouldn't it be too shameful for him? When he looked at Chun-Ong again, there was a little bit of contempt in his eyes. Li Ning almost buried his face in his hands, so ashamed that he did not dare to show his face. This kind of weirdo almost. If he was his disciple, it would be better to beat him to death. He didn't want to embarrass his sect. But Chun-Ong was still smiling as he said to him, "My talent and learning are shallow. Among the 360 Tao, I have only learned 11 or 12 unorthodox method. One of them is called the divine path of incense, gathering the thoughts of all living beings, herding the lambs of the world. There are 4 sorrow, wisdom, action, and wish, all of which can be cultivated to fruition. Are you willing to learn?" Wang Ming thought, the best techniques in the stories are all ways to achieve immortality. If I can achieve immortality, I can bring my whole family and my future wives, concubines, and children to live forever, then my immortal bones won't be in vain. If you want to learn, then learn the best method. Otherwise, what's the point of learning like him? He asked, "Can I achieve immortality this way?" Chun-Ong shook his head and said, "It's just like daughter threads climbing ivy. Other people's ancestral graves are like flowers in the mirror and the moon in the water. In the end, it's hard to avoid disaster." Wang Ming shook his head and said, "Then I won't learn." Chun-Ong said again, "Then how about I teach you the method of plucking human cauldrons, harmonizing yin and yang, and achieving bliss together?" Wang Ming's eyes were full of interest, but he was someone who had read stories after all, and knew that this was a test. Besides, if he could achieve the Tao of immortality, he would have a lot of time to learn these things in the future. He quickly shook his head and said, "It's not the right way, I won't learn." Chun-Ong laughed even more happily. He nodded and said, "You are worth teaching. If you go astray, it's hard to avoid the end of our fate." His words made Wang Ming even more complacent, and he let down his guard more and more. He heard Chun-Ong continue to say, "The way of external alchemy by burning fire, using herbs and spirit herbs on the outside, and using lead and mercury on the inside, combining heaven, earth, and man, are you willing to learn?" Wang Ming fell into the trap and shook his head reflexively. "I won't learn anything that can't achieve immortality." Hearing this, Chun-Ong pretended to be angry and sneered. "You won't learn this, won't learn that, won't learn? Then forget it." After saying this, he waved his sleeves and left with the immobile spirit crane. Before he left, he pointed at Wang Ming's feet. Wang Ming wanted to chase after him, but he fell 3 times in a row and couldn't move his feet. He could only watch as Chen Ong swaggered away and said in a daze, "Why didn't he follow the routine? Why didn't he follow the routine?" Returning to the main hall and sealing the doors and windows, Chen Ong turned back and sneered at the spirit crane. The spirit crane's eyes were pure and kind, as if what happened in the past didn't happen, but Chen Ong was not moved at all. He sneered and said, "What? The snake that bullied me in the past was jubilant, and now you're acting like this? If I don't teach you a lesson, how will you remember that a snake with a master can't be bullied?" He glanced at the spirit crane's well-groomed feathers, and then at Mo Cho, who was curled up at his feet, feeling wronged. He immediately revealed a smile that made the spirit crane tremble. After a short while, Li Ning was surprised to see a white crane with messy feathers, with only 1/10 of its feathers left, soar into the sky from the main hall. It circled above Xixia Temple and cried sadly. It sounded very wrong. After circling for a long time, it flew toward Xixia Mountain with hatred, crying nonstop along the way. It was heartbreaking to hear it. No one knew where it went to get help. Chen Ong did all this to form some ties with some key people in this world, so that he would have a reason to interfere in Amei's plan in the future. Now that the chess pieces were in place, he immersed himself in the research and conclusion of this world's natural laws. There were 3 big problems in this world that he urgently wanted to solve. First, in the absence of reproductive isolation, the creation of living things and the mystery of life, this kind of problem related to the Tao of creation. Second, the problem of the evil qi having reached the uniqueness of this universe. Third, the Earth-axis magnetism, the relationship between the blessed enclave and the structure of the planet, the study of the planet in Shushan, and the analysis of space. In a situation where there was no way to build a professional laboratory, Chen Ong found a scientific method that was completely different from the scientific and technological universe. The way to prove the Tao by magical treasures, in general, was to give up all the specific functions of magical treasures, and walk towards the path of using magical treasures to evolve the laws of nature, the Tao of heaven, and peep into the path of Tao. Chen Ong suspected that someone in this world had already tried this path, such as a very suspicious 9-condensation cauldron. The innate qi embryo inside was obviously a treasure that someone had refined to simulate the evolution of the world and peep into the Tao. Refining treasures is like refining people, refining treasures is like cultivation. Chen Ong sighed. If one day I can refine an immortal, the basic cultivation of this world will basically be no secret to me. If I can refine a planet, most of Shushan's secrets will be no secret to me. First, I will set a small goal for myself. For example, I will refine Mars into a planet like Shushan's Earth. Another example, I will refine a celestial immortal from the soil. Where is he? If you have a goal, you might as well experiment when you are looking for the space of the Master God. Under the premise that you don't cause a big mess.